Chapter 881 _ That's an I. Boom. The bottom of the sea vibrated, and the seawater around Liang was constantly twisted, driven by this vibration, and squeezed crazily. Including all the creatures in this area, they are running wildly. It seems that they have expected something terrible, which is happening. What do you mean? Liang's face was calm and smiling, Tilda thought. Seeing the scene where even tens of meters of sea kings are fleeing frantically, I am very puzzled. What is happening? Is the accident at the bottom of the sea referring to the present? He really wanted to see what kind of change it was that it was worth so many sea kings fleeing wildly. Even the sea kings, who can be called undersea overlords, have moved. Invariably, it comes from their animals' foreknowledge of danger, which makes them flee frantically. At the same time, Liang used his knowledge and domineering to cover the audience. Under his domineering arrogance, the sea kings he has passed, including sea beasts, all the things he thinks have entered his mind. The accident is about to begin. This time, how many more deaths will it take? I don't know, but let's run away while we're at it. It's about to appear again. We can't escape, only one death. This time, it will definitely be another massacre against us. Quote. The mood of a group of sea kings is very impatient. Clearly, something terrifying is happening. And this kind of thing will endanger their lives. Therefore, they are rushing, wanting to leave this area quickly. Holocaust. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, expressing his inner curiosity and expectation. What happened at the bottom of the sea became more and more strange. But that's what made him feel more hopeful. What is it that can make these sea kings leave here in fear? Is it a natural change at the bottom of the sea, or is it a life? If it is life, then the ability of this life to be at the bottom of the sea is too terrifying. The sea kings that can make the undersea overlords run wildly with their tails between their tails. Its power must have reached an unimaginable realm. Then I'll just keep waiting here. Liang stopped, looking at the soft soil under his feet, waiting quietly. He is looking forward to what kind of wonders he can see next. Is it the kind of thing that Aokiji said? If not, is it related to what Aokiji saw? He still held the lock given by Aokiji in his hand, and was looking around curiously. Whoa! Seawater flows. Ahead of terrifying sea kings sprinted frantically. There was a sea king who hit Liang head-on, and it was too late to dodge. It's frizzy. Liang raised his hand slowly, and a terrifying force hit the seawater. Boom! The seawater was twisted, and the entire sea king was instantly blown up, turned into blood mist, and merged into the seawater. There was also a strong bloody smell in the seawater, which gradually thinned with the flow of the seawater. At this moment, these sea kings don't care about bloody things. There is only one thing in their heads now, that is, escape. The only thing they need to do is to escape from here. If you don't escape, then there is only one death. The bottom of the sea was still shaking, and the ground Liang was standing on was even looser, if not for the fact that he kept floating. I'm afraid, it has to sink deeper below. Under the bottom of the sea, is there any deeper place? Chapter 881 _ That is an I. Under the bottom of the sea, is there any deeper place? Liang's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but be suspicious. So, deeper under the sea, where is the magma? If it is where the magma is located, then the current riot is obviously a scene where magma erupts. In the Neptune's head referring to. The Holocaust is clearly not a natural phenomenon. If it were natural imagination, it would not be called the Holocaust. The movement caused by this natural phenomenon is also quite different. A long time. I thought that the movement of the seabed would last longer. But what Liang didn't expect was that the movement on the bottom of the sea suddenly stopped. What about the carnage they speak of? Liang looked at the seabed suspiciously, and once again the calm seabed was restored, as if it was exactly the same as before, without any changes. 1 minute, 2 minutes. In the blink of an eye, 10 minutes passed. Here, there has not been much change, which makes Li Ang puzzled. Is it possible that those sea kings and sea beasts are united to fool him? This is of course impossible. But, why did the so-called change here suddenly disappear? 0 katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. All of this, he couldn't explain clearly, he could only give up. Thinking of this, he slid his body and left the sea area. When he floated up, he glanced back at the soft soil again, his face showed a touch of interest, but he found something unusual. Some special objects on the seabed already have different shapes. Maybe it was because of the shaking just now that the pile of stone mountains became very chaotic. Next to Stone Mountain, there is a huge lacquer black hole, which is even more terrifying than the tens of meters of Stone Mountain. At a glance, there is not even an end in sight. Even if Li Ang could watch in the dark night, he could not see the end of this huge hole. He shook his head and approached the area of the ordinary. At the same time, 0. His head moved, and the movement stopped abruptly. Gradually, the distance between his figure and the position of the black hole in front of him became larger and larger. Similarly, he finally saw clearly what this black hole was. The lacquer black mouth of dozens of meters is actually just an eyeball. Moreover, this eyeball does not include the surrounding white area, just the pupil in the eyeball. No wonder he didn't see the end. Li Ang took a deep breath, the expression on his face was particularly wonderful. It seems that he has a little idea of what the seabed accident means. Pupils of tens of meters, so how big are the eyes all the time? Hundreds of meters. I'm afraid it won't stop. Li Ang stepped back several hundred meters before finally seeing that, around the hundreds of meters of eyeballs, there were layers of folded scales and huge horns that were almost like mountain peaks. What is it? Even Li Ang felt a little surprised and calmed down a little. At the bottom of the sea, he really may not be able to kill this monster. For a single deposit, there is a terrifying body of hundreds of meters. How big is its overall size? Once it goes crazy, the whole sea area will be turned upside down and it's easy. This moment, Li Ang understands what the massacre refers to. The Holocaust, for this life, was just a meal. Its size is too big, and it solves the problem of food and clothing once, which is a painful blow to other sea kings and even sea beasts, and countless deaths. Chapter 882-Fishman Island. For different body types of living species, what they do will naturally have different views. Compared to this terrifying life, the whole sea is also unsettled after eating a little bit. It's like, Neptune wants to eat a big meal. If it is not killing the lives of the same kind and killing the fish, then, for the fish, it is also a massacre and a great destruction. It's just that Li Ang didn't expect that such a terrifying monster actually exists on the bottom of the sea. Can I kill it now? Li Ang thought for a moment, then shook his head and laughed, unless, I'm going to die. It's too difficult for me to kill it at the bottom of the sea. If it's on land, it won't be possible. At the bottom of the sea, his attacks are effectively blocked. And this monster's attack is extremely terrifying, so if he fights like this, he will suffer a lot. But if 953 fought on land, then he wouldn't be afraid of the monster in front of him at all. If you can't do anything about it, you can only leave. Li Ang waved his hand and gradually left. The monster didn't provoke Li Ang either. After all, Li Ang has a terrifying vitality, and it is not something it can kill. I just don't know if it is because it doesn't like Liang's small size, or because it also feels that Liang is not easy to provoke, so it doesn't act rashly. Under the sea, it is the absolute king. Get out of this area a little bit. Liang looked back and saw something that he hadn't discovered before. It seems that there are some weird lines under the body of this monster. Although the lines are not very obvious, but these lines are folded layer by layer, one by one, like a formation. This should be what Ouchi said. However, what Ouchi said, there is still a certain connection with this monster. Is this formation to imprison this monster's ability to move? Liang was thoughtful, touched his chin, and whispered to himself. Immediately. He shook his head and didn't pay attention to these things. Anyway, he couldn't kill this monster at the bottom of the sea. But it is impossible for this monster to kill him. Soon. Liang saw the ordinary number again. After entering the ordinary number, the nervous and careful thoughts of the girls in front of him gradually dissipated, and a smile appeared on his pretty face. Did you find anything? Taotu's pretty face moved, and she asked with a smile, just now, the shock scared me to death. I thought you encountered something outside. Even if something happened, could it be that these things can stump your husband and me? Liang smiled confidently. That's right. The women were convinced of this. Liang's strength is naturally worthy of recognition. Okay, let's go. Here, I found what I wanted to see. I'll have a look here when I get a chance. Liang waved his hand and controlled the rudder, said. What did you see? Hancock asked with deep curiosity on his delicate face. A monster, the most terrifying monster in the sea, it should be it. Smile on his face, Liang slowly introduced, one pupil has a tens of meters to laugh, and the entire eye has a terrifying lifespan of hundreds of meters. One eye has hundreds of meters. The girls were startled and a little stunned. If this kind of beings attacked them, would they still be able to leave here alive? However, I guess that it should have some kind of restriction. Therefore, it cannot leave that area easily. Otherwise, I am afraid that it will disturb the whole sea long ago. Chapter 882-Fishman Island. However, I guess that it should have some kind of restriction. Therefore, it cannot leave that area easily. Otherwise, I am afraid that it will disturb the whole sea long ago. Liang smiled and said, so far, we have no information about it. If we hadn't come here to see it in person, we might not have been able to discover its existence. That's true. The girls nodded suddenly and said. I don't know, one day I will come here to take a look again. What kind of existence is the formation that it presses on? Is it the power of civilization in the past? I look at it, I'm afraid, it will not live for a short time. At least, it can grow to such a terrible size, and its age is definitely not less than a few hundred years old. Even, thousands of years are very likely. Then, the power to suppress it and make it immobile is a bit intriguing. What kind of power is it? Liang continued to speculate and opened a new door for the girls. The ordinary gradually left the seabed. After the ordinary left, there was a terrifying suction here. The submarine vortex is thus formed. The terrifying suction sucked all the seawater and the many lives in the sea. Even the sea kings with a body size of tens of meters, without exception. The source of the whirlpool, naturally, was the terrifying life that Liang had just seen. Its mouth is open, hundreds of meters in size. The sea water is poured into its mouth continuously, and together with countless lives, sea kings, sea beasts, fish, etc., all life is inevitable and directly enters its belly. This process lasted for about an hour. The suction stopped, and the underwater vortex disappeared without a trace. And everything here stopped again, without a sound. Just like the ordinary seabed, it didn't bring any weirdness. In this silent seabed, an abrupt voice suddenly appeared. Hiccup tilde. Kind of like the sound of eating and then burping. At the same time, the ordinary had already left this area, and Liang stood on the deck, looking back thoughtfully at the sea area in the distance. I always felt that there was another very weak suction just now. However, this weak suction is not too strong, but he is still keenly aware of it. Is that the monster? The corners of his mouth moved slightly, thinking about it in his heart. However, it was not until he saw an island in front of him that his thoughts were drawn from it. Front. An island was very bright and gleaming. The light washed away the surrounding darkness. Bright and beautiful islands, under the sea, become dazzling pearls. 2.7 inches. This is the legendary Fishman Island. Perona's big eyes blinked and said very cutely. That's right. Liang nodded and smiled. It is Fishman Island. Here, there is still some distance from that monster. If the monster is not immobile, then the entire Fishman Island, I am afraid that the life inside will suffer. Are we going to Fishman Island? Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and she had some doubts. Of course, we don't have much oxygen in the coating now. We have to enter the Fishman Island to replenish it, otherwise, I'm afraid it will break if it can't last until the new world. Liang nodded and said slowly. Originally, the coated oxygen cannot last for too long. It is for this reason that the existence of Fishman Island is even more important. Chapter 883-report, found a man suspected of Liang. The ordinary gradually rushed to Fishman Island. When he was about to log in, he was blocked by the guards of Fishman Island. Entering Fishman Island is subject to entry inspection. A mermaid guard held a weapon and whispered. Check it out. Liang's face was calm, and he nodded casually. Immediately, the ordinary entered Fishman Island, and the coating shattered. Then, the soldiers checked it out according to the rules, and after they found nothing harmful to Fishman Island, they let them go. Liang controlled the rudder and gradually arrived at the place where the boat was deposited on Fishman Island. Give a certain amount of berry, let the personnel here help guard, and let people come to do the coating. Liang led Hancock and others to gradually enter the towns of Fishman Island. The streets are bustling and noisy. The Murlocs and mermen were all talking to each other and seemed to be prosperous. Occasionally, some soldiers can be seen patrolling the streets, preventing some unexpected times and disturbing the tranquility of the entire town. Let's accompany you to the clothing store on Fishman Island first. Also, Hancock, your clothes size will also increase. By the way, customize a few more sets. Liang suggested with a smile on his face. Yeah. The girls naturally wouldn't refuse, and nodded quickly. They were still very excited to be able to go to 107 to see the unique clothes on Fishman Island. Under the leadership of Liang, he summoned a bubble car, walked around Fishman Island, and found a more brilliant and luxurious clothing store. As soon as I entered it, I encountered several beautiful mermaids, and the fish tails were constantly swaying. But compared to the beauty of Hancock's girls, it is still a few sorrows. They were also shocked when they saw the faces of Hancock and others. Even as a female mermaid, she couldn't hide her amazed expression. What a beautiful woman. A group of cute mermaids were a little crazy and couldn't help but say. About 10 minutes later, each of the girls asked the staff in this shop to customize several clothes. After leaving the clothing store, I returned to this lively street again. Liang glanced at the surrounding scene and said with a smile, next, let's find some special gourmet restaurants. Okay. Perona's big eyes flickered and said. However, when she thought of Liang's craftsmanship, she was entangled. In fact, they are more willing to eat the delicacies made by Liang. Because Liang's food was so delicious, they couldn't resist the temptation of this kind of food. Liang naturally saw the expressions of the girls and said, well, let's go to a restaurant for a meal first. If it doesn't feel good, then go back to the ordinary, and I'll make it for you. That's great. The girls cheered, their pretty faces blushed slightly, and said excitedly. Let's go. Liang led the girls, smiling, walking down the street. Today's Fishman Island still has a great prejudice against human beings and guards against them. However, because of Li Ang and the girls with beautiful faces, many mermaids can let down their vigilance. After all, this world is still a world of face-to-face. Walking on the streets of Fishman Island, although the fishmen you see are quite beautiful. But compared to the girls around Li Ang, there is still no comparison. On the contrary, the residents of Fishman Island, who consider themselves rich in beauties, were amazed when they saw the appearance of Hancock, Tautu, Tina and others. Such a beautiful human woman really surprised them. And, there are so many of them all at once. Chapter 883_report, found a man suspected of Li Ang. And, there are so many of them all at once. Not far away. A group of guards were shocked when they looked at the beautiful face of the human woman in front of them, but then they saw a young man beside the group of women. First, there was a burst of envy and hatred in my heart. But then, a Murloc guard was a little surprised and asked, "Do you think that human man looks familiar?" Familiar. I want to take his place. The rest of the Murloc guards expressed their envy. Even if it is Fishman Island, this kind of top beauty is not something you can see. Even Fishman Island has such top beauties, AJFH, which can be counted on one hand. Wait. Another guard shook his head and said suspiciously, "I feel a little familiar too." Where have you two met? Not enough, according to my memory, the two of you have never walked out of Fishman Island. No, you who haven't walked out of Fishman Island, do you still think this human is familiar? Isn't it, from somewhere else? Quote. There was a lot of discussion. At this time, a guard saw a mermaid next to him, holding the newspaper in his hand while reading. His pupils shrank, he couldn't help, and said, "I remember, I saw his figure in the newspaper." Quote. Newspapers. Is he so famous? The rest of the guards expressed puzzled expressions. At the same time, the guard was in a hurry and lost his voice. "It's incredible, I'm going to report to King Neptune. The situation is beyond our control. By the way, are you so exaggerated? Isn't it just a human being? You still have to report to King Neptune. Isn't it a show of brains? This time, it's not as simple as you think. I must tell the truth to King Neptune. You wait here, don't provoke them, definitely, remember this." After the guard said this, he left quickly. The group of guards who remained in place were confused and scratched their heads, puzzled. What do you mean? Several people looked at each other and shook their heads. In the palace. A mermaid wearing a crown, with a sturdier body than the average mermaid, with thick fluffy orange-red hair and beard, flaming tattoos on his arms, and thick body hair on his body, is sitting on the chair headed by him. Superior. He is the leader of Fishman Island, King Neptune. Report. A merman guard came in and reported, "King Neptune, a guard patrolling the street, insists on seeing you. It is said that there is something important to report. Bring him in." Neptune thought for a moment and said, "Yes." The guard went and returned, bringing the Murloc guard who was patrolling the streets in with him. Seeing Neptune, the patrolling guard was obviously excited, but with deep concern in his eyes. He said, "King Neptune, I have discovered something very important to Fishman Island." "Please speak." Neptune asked without much fluctuation in his expression. "When I was patrolling the street, I found a familiar man who appeared on our Fishman Island. And this man is suspected of being the legendary one, Li Ang." The guard sighed heavily and told his inner thoughts. Silence. After he said these words, the audience fell into a dead silence. Even Neptune didn't speak. Chapter 884_ready for battle. The guards noticed the strange atmosphere and did not dare to speak. There was only the sound of breathing in the entire hall. These two words, Li Ang, pressed their hearts to the point where they could hardly breathe. How did this monster come to Fishman Island? Although very few mermen enter the Blue Sea on Fishman Island, it does not mean that they are isolated from the world. Some major news on the Blue Sea, they can still know. For example, Whitebeard was killed in the Battle of Marin Vando and so on. Also, the news about Liang has never stopped. Whitebeard died in battle, leaving Fishman Island with no one to protect him. During this time, the pirates who came to Fishman Island became more and more chaotic. No one shelters Fishman Island, which makes the pirates here very rampant. In this chaotic situation, I learned that the monster Liang came to Fishman Island. Visible. Neptune's mood is really tired, too tired. If one is not careful, I am afraid, he will ruin the future of Fishman Island. This monster, Liang, is different from ordinary pirates. This is a real terrifying monster. It is even more terrifying than the Whitebeard who sheltered them in the past. Which area is he in now? Neptune raised his brows and asked. Currently, on North Street. The guard swallowed his saliva and told the truth. North Street. Neptune's eyes fell into deep thought, and he was thinking about how to deal with these things. Liang came to Fishman Island, and it was not a simple matter. However, it's not all bad. His eyes flickered, and there was an impulse in his heart. Now there is no shelter in Fishman Island, which leads to the rampant pirates. If you can get a backer for Fishman Island, it will definitely be beneficial and harmless to Fishman Island. In particular, this backer, if it is Liang, is even more reliable. Compared with the deterrent power of Whitebeard, it is a stronger terrifying monster. Left Minister, Right Minister, what do you think? Neptune looked at the ministers on both sides and asked. These two can give him a lot of advice. It can be said that most of the decisions will be implemented after the discussion between the two ministers. The two ministers looked at each other, speechless for a while. In the face of monsters like Liang, they have no choice in their hearts. Do you want to drive the opponent out? If the other party is dissatisfied, it is only a very easy thing to destroy Fishman Island. At the moment, there is only one way that is the safest. Be sure to treat him with delicious food and drink to satisfy him, and our Fishman Island will not fall into crisis. As for other things, I'll mention them again when I've served him well. This will also ensure that even if the other party disagrees, they won't turn their backs. Minister Zuo hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice. That's right. The right minister's eyes flickered, and he nodded quickly. In any case, they can't choose to provoke Liang, this is their plan. Once you provoke Liang, it will simply be troublesome. The entire Fishman Island will be implicated. You know, Liang, this monster is not only powerful, but also murderous. Just like the war on the top, killing countless pirates and navy. It's a murder without distinction. Chapter 884 waiting for it. It's a murder without distinction. However, such a person is still very strong. If such people are very weak, they don't have to worry, they can just send troops to suppress them. But Liang's strength is not something they can compete with on Fishman Island. Only by properly entertaining the other party can the absolute safety of Fishman Island be guaranteed. This guy Hody, take good care of him. Don't let him act rashly, he won't be a pity to die. However, if you let him mess up the atmosphere of our Fishman Island, it will bring bad sense to the monster Liang. That's the real big deal. Neptune took a deep breath and said solemnly. Yes, His Majesty the King. The rest nodded. Never, let Hody Jones's actions be blamed on Fishman Island. This is what they think, and it is also what Neptune is most worried about. Although he doesn't think that Hody Jones has the strength to kill Liang, he has the strength to offend Liang. He didn't know whether the Fishman Island would suffer after he made Liang lively. But he didn't dare to gamble the entire Fishman Island against such a slim chance. Therefore, it is necessary to strictly control Hody Jones's ability to act during this period. Otherwise, his ability to cause trouble is extraordinary. Okay, let's go. Neptune waved his hand and said. 0 katakana middle dot katakana middle dot katakana middle dot katakana middle dot ask for flowers 0 katakana middle dot katakana middle dot. Immediately, watching everyone leave, he also gradually left the palace. He was really worried that he didn't see Liang in person. He intends to leave the palace to observe Liang's every move, and if there is a conflict, he can stop it as soon as possible. Visible. Liang was only one person, but it brought huge waves to Fishman Island. Even the king of Fishman Island, Neptune, was in a hurry. There is no other reason. Liang's ability is too great, and the destruction of Fishman Island will only happen in an instant. Neptune didn't dare to bet whether Liang would attack Fishman Island. He can only observe Liang's actions and prevent all accidents from happening. Under Neptune's order, the entire palace became busy. 0. The left minister and the right minister instructed the staff to strictly guard the place of Hody Jones, and never allow Hody Jones to act indiscriminately during this time. If he accidentally provokes Liang, Hody Jones will definitely die miserably. Mainly, Hody Jones provokes Liang, and they are afraid that Liang will blame the Fishman Island. At that time, Liang is going to destroy Fishman Island. Who can stop it? No one can stop Liang. This thing is almost recognized. Those who can block Liang, I am afraid that they do not exist in this world. Even Whitebeard, who once sheltered their Fishman Island, did not have the strength to stop Liang. Go. A group of guards set off from the palace, ready to monitor Fishman Street. Fishman Street, in their eyes, is mostly dirty, chaotic, and bloody, and Hody Jones, in Fishman Street, is a well-known leader. To prevent Hody Jones from rioting, then just monitor Fishman Street. Including Neptune, they have also been dispatched. As for Liang's arrival on Fishman Island, each of them began to prepare for it. In any case, it is necessary to prevent Liang from attacking Fishman Island. It's best when nothing happens. They also desperately hoped that Liang would not stay on Fishman Island for too long, otherwise, it would be impossible for them to monitor each other every day. Moreover, it is difficult to guarantee that it will not be discovered by the other party. It is regarded as an unfriendly move by the Fisherman Island, which directly makes the other party mark the Fishman Island with a disgusting label, but the gain outweighs the loss. Chapter 885-Mermaid Cafe. There's a cafe up front. Do we want to take a seat? Liang looked at the girls and laughed when he saw what the girls were holding. Along the way, I have admired many unique buildings on Fishman Island. Compared with the buildings on the Blue Sea, it is obviously different. The buildings on Fishman Island tend to have seawater in every building. Otherwise, once the mermaid is seriously dehydrated, it will be difficult to save. Therefore, the construction of swimming pools in every building is inevitable. Yeah. The girls nodded lightly, without any objection. Immediately, Liang took Hancock and others into the Mermaid Cafe in front of them smoothly. Welcome. A crisp and pleasant voice came out. A cute girl with green hair was bowing and looking at Liang with a sweet smile. Immediately, her smile became clear, and her eyes gradually became terrified. Her name is Kemi. It was also the mermaid that was auctioned off at the population auction. Therefore, she is naturally very clear about Liang's identity. A sense of fear arises spontaneously. At the beginning, she was rescued by Rayleigh, but it is still difficult to erase the psychological shadow that once left her head. At first she thought she had forgotten. However, when she saw Liang's appearance, she realized that nothing is so easy to forget. You. Kemi's lips trembled, her face was pale, she pointed at Liang, and trembled. I'm just here for coffee. Liang glanced at Kemi and said with a smile. As for Kemi's mood, it's not something he needs to think about. Anyway, he just came here for coffee. Could it be that the other party dares not to welcome guests? Kemi. At this time, a mermaid with short black hair, glamorous blue eyes, pale skin, purple nails, wearing a hooded top and often smoking with a pipe, came over. Her beautiful eyes were tightly closed, looking at Kemifeng's appearance, and asked, "Are you okay?" "No, it's nothing, Mrs. Charlie." Kemi shook her head nervously, not daring to say a word. She looked at Liang in front of her out of the corner of the eye, and still couldn't hide a deep sense of fear. There's nothing wrong with you still being so scared. Mrs. Charlie was sullen in her heart, and her sexy and beautiful face slipped a little suspiciously. She first glanced at Liang in front of her, and then looked at Hancock beside Liang. Her eyes flashed with deep surprise, even she rarely saw such a beautiful human woman. Looking at Tautu, Tina, Khalifa and others from Hancock, she was even more shocked. This is simply the base camp of human beauties. There was no ordinary appearance around this man. Each one is basically a top peerless beauty. Guest, what do you need? Mrs. Charlie took a deep breath, looked at Liang, and asked very politely. Although she didn't know why Kemi showed such an air, as the owner of the cafe, she naturally couldn't lose her manners. Bring us a cup of coffee each. Liang's face was calm, and he said lightly. Kemi. Mrs. Charlie looked at Kemi and instructed. Mrs. Charlie, you, come with me. Kemi's pretty face turned pale, hesitant, and said. Chapter 885-Mermaid Cafe. Kemi's pretty face turned pale, hesitant, and said. When she watched Liang and others gradually sit by the window, her little face became even more flustered. What the hell happened to you? Mrs. Charlie was very puzzled and asked again. The lively and lovely Kemi should rarely have such emotions. But why, now one after another, revealing so many gaffes? Immediately, Kemi took Mrs. Charlie out of the cafe. Looking at the window, still staring at Liang, Kemi shivered, his lips trembled, and the sense of fear in his heart was infinitely magnified. It was as if he recalled the days when he was a slave in the population auction. Tell me, why are you so scared? Madame Charlie frowned and asked. He is Liang. Kemi hesitated, opened his mouth slowly, and said. Liang. Madame Charlie's pupils shrank. She naturally knew that Liang was a human being. This is a real monster. Even more terrifying monsters than the four emperors. And the young man just now was actually Liang. She was a little surprised. She seldom saw Liang's face, so at first, she didn't even think about it in that direction. But now, after hearing what Kemi said, she finally understood why Kemi was so afraid. Mrs. Charlie, what are we going to do? Kemi panicked and asked. She was really afraid that Liang would suddenly kidnap her again. With the opponent's terrifying strength, it seems very easy to do this. Moreover, if the other party wants to catch the merman wantonly, it is not impossible. As long as there is enough power, it will not be a problem to take away all the mermaids here on Fishman Island. For Liang, this is also very easy. After all, there is no enemy who can compete with him on Fishman Island. He will not act rashly. I can see that he is very calm. He has no murderous intention in his heart, nor is he crazy. Therefore, as long as we keep ourselves safe and don't provoke him, he will not do anything to us. Mrs. Charlie thought for a while and said solemnly. Are we really going to let him stay at the Mermaid Cafe? Kemi, still terrified, asked. Don't tell me, do you want to drive him out? In this case, his face will be lost. At that time, it may not be against us. Or even against the entire Fishman Island. Don't doubt, he really has the strength to take action on Fishman Island. We just need to take good care of him. Mrs. Charlie's expression gradually recovered and she said. If so, if the other party has to do it, then she can't do anything. She is more willing to believe that as long as Liang is not provoked, there will be no major trouble. However, she, good luck, never understood, why did this monster suddenly come to Fishman Island? This matter seems to be reported to King Neptune. She didn't know that Neptune had already heard the news and was looking for Liang everywhere. It's a pity that, with Neptune's IQ, if he wants to find Liang, he doesn't know it's a matter of the year of the monkey and the month of the horse. Okay, Kemi, let's go to work. Mrs. Charlie's face changed and she said slowly. She was worried, but she also had another idea in her heart. Today, Fishman Island has no shelter. Everyone has the intention of getting their hands on Fishman Island. In this case, if you can find a backer, it is definitely something to celebrate for Fishman Island. During this time, the pirates who came to Fishman Island have become more and more rampant. If these are not curbed, I'm afraid that Fishman Island will sooner or later become a paradise for those rampant pirates. Mrs. Charlie's pale and delicate face looked very heavy, and she thought so in her heart. Chapter 886-Divination. However, if someone can stand up and claim that Fishman Island belongs to him, naturally, it can reduce a lot of trouble. Fishman Island is not only eye-catching. Who is the most suitable person for this? Undoubtedly, Li Ang is the most suitable candidate. In particular, Li Ang has a strong reputation and has an extraordinary influence in the New World. If Fishman Island is an affiliate of the other party, it can definitely survive in this seabed. Even if countless pirates enter Fishman Island in the future, they will never dare to do anything wrong on Fishman Island. After all, Fishman Island has a terrifying backer. I don't know, what would he mean? Mrs. Charlie's face became very complicated. She shook her head and sighed, and said, if you want him to protect Fishman Island, you will have to pay a lot. However, I have to let me know what his character is like. Let me do a divination to see what kind of behavior he will do in the future, and then I dare to judge whether he is suitable for sheltering Fishman Island. Thought here. Mrs. Charlie also walked into the Mermaid Cafe. By the window. Li Ang and the girls have already tasted the fragrant coffee, and the fragrance wafts out. Mrs. Charlie's Mermaid Cafe, also 287, is more famous. It was delicious. Quote. Li Ang sat on the chair, looked at Madame Charlie, and smiled. Thank you. Mrs. Charlie nodded lightly and said. As for Kemi. Mrs. Charlie could clearly see that when Kemi was carrying the coffee, her hands were shaking constantly, and her expression couldn't hide the fear. Let me come. Mrs. Charlie raised her brows and said bluntly. According to Kemi's mentality, I'm afraid that I don't know how much coffee has been poured before the coffee is delivered. It is naturally a very bad thing for the guests to see. Mrs. Charlie, I'm sorry. Kemi's little face showed a bit of guilt, said. It's all right, you go to rest first. Mrs. Charlie shook her head and said very calmly. Immediately, Kemi also gradually left the hall and found a place to rest. However, she could never calm down. When she thought that the terrifying monster was on Fishman Island, her mood was indescribable. Soon. Mrs. Charlie personally delivered the coffee to Li Ang and said softly, please take it slow. AJDD. Corona, yours. Li Ang smiled and said. Well, it smells good. Corona showed a sweet smile and said. After the coffee was delivered, Mrs. Charlie did not leave, but still stood beside Li Ang. This made Li Ang very puzzled and asked with a smile, Mrs. Charlie, is there anything else? You know me. Mrs. Charlie was a little shocked, couldn't help it, and asked with red lips slightly parted. Of course, what's so surprising about it? Just listening to people talking on the street, saying that the nearby Madame Charlie's cafe is the best place for coffee in the area. Li Ang smiled lightly and lied casually. Mrs. Charlie, he naturally knew who it was. Aaron's sister. Moreover, Mrs. Charlie, who can also do divination, must not be ignorant. It's surprising that someone as big as you knows my name. Chapter 886-Divination. NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. It's surprising that someone as big as you knows my name. Mrs. Charlie sighed and said. There's nothing strange about it, I just have a good memory. So, you're looking for me, do you want me to help? Li Ang looked at Madame Charlie's delicate and mature face and asked. The crisp short hair made Madame Charlie's charm even more prominent. Wearing a dark blue top, she showed part of the two groups in the middle. That's what makes her even more attracted to her charm. Another mermaid, adding a bit of a strange beauty. Feeling Li Ang's gaze, Mrs. Shawley felt shy in her heart, but she didn't dare to speak falsely. She could only forcibly suppress the restlessness in her heart and bit her red lips. A long time. She looked at Liang and said in a low voice, "Guest, if you don't mind, I would like to do a divination for you. What do you think?" Divination. Liang smiled and nodded. "If it's free, then I'll be happy." "Naturally it's free. After all, it's me who proposed it, not you." Mrs. Charlie nodded with a smile. She is cold and mature, with a smile on her face, which shows her allure. It is very moving, and the fish tail is shaking for a while, which makes people want to play. "Please come into the room, my divination tool is in the room." Mrs. Charlie spoke slowly and said, "Can anyone watch this process?" Hancock's beautiful eyes flashed a bit of curiosity and asked. For this kind of divination, everyone present basically met for the first time, and naturally there was a lot of curiosity. "Sorry, I can't." Mrs. Charlie shook her head and sighed. "If it wasn't for the rules, I think I would be happy to let you see it. After all, your beauty really makes you feel good." "All right then." The women did not force it. "Mr. Liang, please come with me." Madame Shawli took a deep look at Liang and said, "You wait for me, I'll come when I go." Liang smiled, rubbed Hancock's hair, and smiled. "Come on, the results of the divination, remember to tell us." Hancock's girls said with a smile, and they didn't think there was anything wrong. "As for whether you are worried that Mrs. Shawli will be detrimental to Liang, even if this is the case, they don't think that Madame Shawli has the strength to attack Liang. Therefore, their mood is very stable." Subsequently, Liang followed Madame Shawli and walked into Madame Shawli's room step by step. A faint direction drifted away. Into the eye, the most prominent place is a crystal ball in front. If nothing else, this crystal ball is supposed to be the tool used by Mrs. Charlie for divination. "What do I need to do?" Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Madame Shawli's back with a smile, and said. Looking from behind, Mrs. Charlie's fishtail is moving, and her slender figure is still very attractive. Madame Shawli didn't notice Liang's gaze and said bluntly, "You just need to sit on the sofa. It's enough not to disturb the whole process. It's that simple." "That's fine. I also want to know what my future will be like." Liang laughed and sat on the sofa, watching Mrs. Charlie busy. Mrs. Shawli was wearing a dark blue top. Her short hair was refreshing and neat, her eyes were like amber, very moving, her delicate facial features, and her whole face exuded a cool beauty. Chapter 887 _ What are you talking about? Take it off. During the whole process, Liang did not make a sound to disturb Mrs. Shawli. Seeing Mrs. Shawli's preparations and the slender and delicate figure of the other party, Liang's eyes flashed a little with a smile, and he looked at the serious Mrs. Shawli very intently. Madame Shawli was indulging in her divination, but she didn't notice Liang's gaze. She held the crystal ball on a table, took a deep breath, and said, "Mr. Liang, please get ready, I'm going to start divination. Don't disturb me during the whole process." "I know, so I can just sit here." Liang nodded with a smile and said, "Yes, in the whole process, you just need to sit on the chair without any movement or sound. The next divination is up to me." After Mrs. Charlie nodded, she looked at the crystal ball intently. She looks very mysterious in her dark blue hat. However, it also has a strange vibe. Liang just sat in the chair like this, bored in every possible way. He had no choice but to look at Shawli's face in front of him, with a pair of beautiful big eyes, Chang's nose and red lips, exuding mature charm. As a mermaid, Mrs. Charlie is also quite beautiful. In particular, her age is relatively mature, and her every move has the charm of a mature woman. This kind of temperament makes it easy for men to indulge in their own. Liang observed Mrs. Shawli so carefully. And Mrs. Charlie herself was indulging in her own divination. Her eyes narrowed slightly, focused. One image after another appeared in her mind. She didn't dare to be careless at all. Divination was something that required a high degree of seriousness. If she is careless, it is likely to lead to the failure of the divination. Immediately after, a picture appeared in her mind. Li Ang's face had an evil smile on his face, and his eyes seemed to be able to penetrate his heart. Just looking at Shachi like this, these eyes seemed to be able to attract people. Shachi's forehead was dripping with cold sweat, and she held the crystal ball tightly with both hands, but she still did not withdraw from it. In her divination, the screen changed in an instant. Li Ang's figure, standing above the Fishman Island, holding a bright red blade in his hand, cut it down with one knife, and the entire Fishman Island was torn apart and reduced to ruins. And Shachi, who witnessed all this happen with her own eyes, her red lips trembling. However, the divination has not been completely completed. I see. In the of divination. On the ground, King Neptune struggled hard, but was cut off by a knife from the sky, which directly wiped out Neptune's life. All the inhabitants of Fishman Island were slaughtered. She saw that Li Ang had turned into a bright red warrior, covered in bright red armor, and the speed had reached the limit. She could only see the red light flashing. On the ground, there appeared the corpses of murlocs and mermaids. Rivers of blood. It was a real river of blood that no one could resist. The entire Fishman Island was completely dominated by Li Ang's terrifying strength. All the mermaids are sold to the Blue Sea. The murlocs, as coolies, constantly help others to carry goods, with chains under their feet. This is the final fate of Fishman Island. Since then, Fishman Island has completely become a paradise for human beings. And the murlocs and mermen have gradually become inferior lives, and under the notice of humans, they have been miserable. And all of this was caused by Li Ang. All over the Fishman Island, wars broke out everywhere. The murlocs and mermaids that were affected suffered heavy casualties. In the end, the number of murlocs and mermaids gradually dwindled, approaching the brink of extinction. The screen came to this moment. Mrs. Charlie screamed in fear. Ah. Chapter 887 _ what are you talking about, take it off. And GT, page 1/2, please click the next page to continue reading. Mrs. Charlie screamed in fear. Ah. She pushed away the crystal ball directly, and the crystal ball rolled on the ground, rolling continuously. But the quality of the crystal ball is very good, and there is no crack. On the contrary, Mrs. Charlie fell directly on the sofa. Her beautiful eyes were full of fear, looking at Li Ang who was looking at her. Her red lips trembled, and the fear could not be concealed on her delicate face. She knew very well that her divination had an accuracy rate of 99.99%. Does that mean the picture of her own divination just now will really appear? Murlocs and mermen will become extinct. Fishman Island, reduced to a paradise for human beings, burning, killing, plundering, and committing all kinds of evil, the Fishman Island is still vivid in her mind. The divination was over, but this ending made her unacceptable, and she was absolutely unwilling to accept it. Fishman Island will eventually usher in destruction. And everything was caused by Li Ang in front of him. She was frightened, her slender jade fingers trembled, pointing at Li Ang, her red lips parted slightly, and she said in a trembling voice, You devil. Devil. Li Ang looked at Mrs. Charlie in surprise and asked, Could it be that you have found something interesting? Let me know. No, it won't. There must be something wrong. It must not be like this. Mrs. Charlie looked a little crazy, and her big eyes were full of madness. What kind of divination result is it? Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly, and said with a little interest, Could it be that I will destroy the entire Fishman Island? So, you are very scared. Right? No. Mrs. Charlie quickly shook her head, her red lips trembling. Countless images lingered in her head, and the results of the divination just now were still vivid in her mind. She was afraid, and she thought of countless ways to remedy it. However, none of them could resist Li Ang's terrifying combat power. At this moment, she felt very helpless. How to do? What should I do? Madame Shaoli thought frantically in her heart. Her originally pale face became even more pale, as if morbidly pale, with no blood. There must be a way. Mrs. Charlie rolled her eyes, looked at Li Ang in front of her, and said, 273 you definitely won't do anything to Fishman Island, right? Right. She desperately wanted Li Ang's affirmation. However, Li Ang didn't know what Madame Shaoli was talking about. He waved his hand and said, what are you talking about? Tell me about the process and results of the divination. No, you can't. Mrs. Shaoli was afraid. After she told Li Ang the result of the divination, things really didn't turn around. Then how do you want me to guarantee it? Li Ang's face was calm, and he said lightly. Seeing Mrs. Charlie's expression, he naturally had a lot of guesses in his heart. If you guessed correctly, Mrs. Charlie's divination turned out not to be so optimistic. Therefore, Lady Charlie was afraid that he would destroy Fishman Island, and conceal the result of the divination. If it wasn't for Fishman Island, Mrs. Charlie's mood changes would never have been so dramatic. Mrs. Charlie's calmness is obvious to all. It can make her stunned and even become crazy. It can be seen that the result of the divination is not so good. Mrs. Charlie was speechless. In a hurry, she lifted off her blue clothes, revealing a jade statue like a work of art. She bit her red lips lightly, a bit of blush appeared on her face, and said, as long as you promise me, don't do anything to Fishman Island. From now on, I am yours. Chapter 888 _ What's up with the mermaid? What's going on? Li Ang was shocked by this dramatic picture. He looked at Mrs. Shaoli, who was as delicate as jade in front of him, with a confused expression. Talking, why did you come out like this? But then again, looking at Mrs. Charlie's figure, he was quite devilish. Moreover, coupled with the constant shaking of fish tails in the upper and lower body, it adds a bit of strange beauty. The cold and beautiful face showed a bit of blush and shyness, and the skin was as white as jade. Li Ang looked at it again, and his blood was tumbling. At this time, Mrs. Shaoli didn't know what to do anymore, and in a hurry, she used the last resort. However, she herself does not think her own way is feasible. However, she regretted the act just now. This time, it was really impulsive. She wanted to put her clothes on immediately, but couldn't do it. Therefore, her whole body was stiff on the spot, looking at Li Ang in front of her, speechless for a while. The original tension and fear were abruptly annihilated by her own actions. Now she has become unusually calm. However, she still couldn't do anything. The air was a little cold, making her feel the coldness of her skin. Tell me, what exactly did you divination just now? Li Ang looked at Madame Shaoli's figure, retracted his gaze, and said. You will destroy Fishman Island. Mrs. Charlie bit her red lips and said with a heavy heart. Why should I attack Fishman Island? Li Ang was very suspicious and asked again. If it wasn't for a specific reason, he would definitely not do it casually. His power is in his own hands, not in others. If he wants to do it, there must be a reason. Otherwise, destroying the entire Fishman Island would be of no benefit to him. Therefore, he wanted to know why he wanted to destroy Fishman Island. I don't know either. Mrs. Charlie shook her head quickly. She couldn't explain clearly why Li Ang wanted to destroy Fishman Island. It's just that she just got such a picture by divination. The specific reason will naturally not appear in divination. Thinking about it carefully, Mrs. Shaoli also felt that things were a bit abrupt. If there is no specific reason, why did the other party want to destroy Fishman Island? Benefits diaresis. Mrs. Charlie bit her pink lips and whispered. Benefits. Li Ang laughed dumbly, shook his head and said, do you think that I want to sell mermaids and then destroy the Fishman Island? However, I don't lack interests at all now. So, your divination is really so clever. My divination, the chance of being wrong is only 0.001%. Mrs. Shaoli's face was heavy, and she still had a lot of confidence in her own methods. It is precisely because the accuracy rate is quite high that when the results of the divination appear, her mood changes so drastically. There isn't an accurate process, you just see the results. Is something like this really credible? Li Ang said with a smile. However, that's what the results showed. Inevitably, something happened that caused you to launch an attack on Fishman Island. You single-handedly slashed down and cut Fishman Island in half. Mrs. Charlie's forehead dripped with cold sweat, her red lips trembling, and said. At that time, Li Ang slashed it down and destroyed almost half of the Fishman Island. The scene is still vivid in my mind. It was because of this that she knew more deeply how terrifying the strength of Li Ang in front of her. Chapter 888 _ What's Up with the Mermaid? And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. It was because of this that she knew more deeply how terrifying the strength of Li Ang in front of her. With just one knife, it almost destroyed Fishman Island. Who can do such a thing? But the stronger Li Ang was, the more flustered she became. After all, she had already predicted that Fishman Island would be destroyed. So, no matter what, she wants to prevent such a thing from happening. You want to be my woman? With a smile on his face, Li Ang looked at Madame Xiaoli's devilish figure and said. Seeing Li Ang's gaze, Mrs. Xiaoli's face flushed slightly. She was also shocked by her bold move, but she didn't turn back when she opened the bow. It was also the first time that she was seen by a man. However, for Fishman Island, she thought, it was worth it. Immediately, Mrs. Charlie gritted her silver teeth, her red lips parted slightly, and nodded. I am willing to be your woman, but you have to promise me that you will never do anything to Fishman Island. By the way, I don't even know why I want to attack Fishman Island. How can I promise you? Li Ang glanced at Madame Charlie strangely and said. I always feel that women who do divination are a little neurotic. No matter what, you can't attack Fishman Island. Mrs. Xiaoli looked at Li Ang with her beautiful eyes, with a firm expression. This can't be done. In case the people of Fishman Island do something that makes me angry, I can't guarantee that they will do something to Fishman Island. So, in the final analysis, it's not about me, but the Fishman Island. If Fishman Island didn't provoke me, I would definitely not do it easily. But if they all bullied me, wouldn't it be a joke if I didn't do it? Don't you want a strong person to be indifferent in the face of the provocation of the weak? What you're saying is so hilarious. Li Ang laughed dumbly and spoke directly. There are weak people to provoke you, can't you kill yourself? He admits that he does not have such a good mentality to let the weak stand on his head and shout and remain indifferent. Hearing Li Ang's words, Mrs. Xiaoli also calmed down and did not speak. Really? What if her divination was the death of the people of Fishman Island? Could it be that Li Ang would really allow these weaklings to provoke His Majesty? But when she thought that Fishman Island would be destroyed by Li Ang's hands, her mood could not be recovered. How to do? In the end, how to do? Mrs. Xiaoli felt the coldness of her skin, her pretty face was rosy, her beautiful eyes dodged, and she did not dare to meet Li Ang's gaze. But she felt that Li Ang's eyes had been fixed on her body, and she was still a little ashamed. Although she hadn't met her, her eyes kept lingering on her body, and she still had a very strange, jiao nu jiao feeling, wishing she could find a seam to get in. By the way, I have a question. Li Ang stood up, walked to Madame Xiaoli's side, and smiled. What? Mrs. Charlie blushed and whispered. She, the beauty of the iceberg, was also shy at the moment. It really surprised Li Ang. A faint direction drifted away. Li Ang took a deep breath, leaned against Mrs. Charlie's ear, and asked with a smile, Mermaid, what's the matter? Obviously, only fish tails. With a swish, Mrs. Xiaoli's face became even more red, like the sunset on the horizon, tingling half the sky. This kind of question was asked blatantly by a man. This made her feel very embarrassed. At a certain age, fish tails will turn into human feet. That is to say, at that time, mermaids will be indistinguishable from humans. Mrs. Charlie blushed and explained, of course, the mermaid is always free to change between two states. Chapter 889_Mermaids are not simple either. Then can you transform into a human now? Li Ang looked at Madame Xiaoli with a smile and asked. Seeing that Mrs. Xiaoli was so bold, and she had obviously given herself to him, how could he be indifferent? It is a beast to take advantage of people's danger, but it is not as good as a beast when it comes to the door and does not do anything. Not yet, not yet. Mrs. Charlie shook her head, blushing red, and said in a low voice. No, then don't I have to wait for you for years? Li Ang looked at Madame Xiaoli speechlessly and said. This is good, the blood is aroused, but there is no place to release it. At this time, Mrs. Xiaoli bit her red lips, her beautiful eyes seemed to cry, and said, I can use other methods. Well. Li Ang glanced suspiciously at Mrs. Charlie. Mermaid, isn't it so simple? 013. Although Mrs. Charlie had never experienced such a thing, she would talk about some of these things while chatting with some friends who had become women. Therefore, she naturally knew that although she could not become human. However, there is more than one way to release Li Ang. Mermaids, aren't they so simple? Li Ang laughed and stood beside Mrs. Xiaoli, said. Mrs. Charlie blushed and did not speak. Get dressed. Li Ang helped Mrs. Xiaoli pick up the dark blue clothes and put them on the other side. Covering that white jade-like skin, as well as that devil's figure, are also covered. At this time, Mrs. Xiaoli bit her red lips and said firmly, don't do anything to Fishman Island. If something like that happens on Fishman Island, I won't stop it. However, if no one provokes you, please don't do anything to Fishman Island. This point, you don't need to say more, I will definitely abide by it. Li Ang smiled and said. Just kidding, did he have nothing to do himself? It's okay to destroy Fishman Island, what good does he have? Therefore, he doubted the authenticity of Mrs. Charlie's divination. However, Mrs. Charlie herself believed in this divination. Therefore, she has been frightened and came up with countless ways to make up for the appearance of this tragic ending. In this way, it is cheaper for Li Ang. If you don't take advantage of it, wouldn't it be your own loss? Li Ang thought to himself, with a smile on his face, he sat on the chair and said, come on, sit by my side. Mrs. Xiaoli hesitated for a moment, blushed, shook her name, and sat beside Li Ang. Then, Li Ang's hand hugged Mrs. Xiaoli, and she could clearly feel that Mrs. Xiaoli's body trembled and then stiffened. There was no sign of moving, but there was no resistance. Are you too nervous? Li Ang looked at Madame Xiaoli's big eyes and said. No, no. Mrs. Charlie took a deep breath, calmed down, and relaxed her body. That's okay, just now. You said, what other methods are there? I want to experience it. Li Ang's eyes flashed a bit of interest, said. Finished talking. Mrs. Charlie's face turned crimson at an obvious speed, and the ruddy blood hit her forehead. Clouds of white mist appeared on her head. She just said that just now, but she is not very clear about the specifics. When talking to some women's friends, it is inevitable that these issues will be involved. But if she really did it, she was still a pure novice. Chapter 889_Mermaids are not simple either. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. When talking to some women's friends, it is inevitable that these issues will be involved. But if she really did it, she was still a pure novice. I'll teach you. Li Ang smiled, hugging Mrs. Xiaoli's soft body, feeling the coldness, and felt comfortable for a while. He rubbed Mrs. Charlie's fish tail with a smile. It's a beautiful fish tail. Yeah. Mrs. Charlie blushed. The mermaid's tail could not be touched, but she did not remind Li Ang. Anyway, she admitted that she also belonged to Li Ang. The merman's tail, in fact, is the most sensitive place. Therefore, When Liang was rubbing the tail of the fish, Mrs. Shaoli felt a little weak all over. She was paralyzed directly in front of Liang, her face was red, and her big eyes were very blurry. So entering the state, Liang was a little surprised, looking at Mrs. Shaoli, whose eyes were blurred. At this time, Mrs. Shaoli's face was crimson red, and her cold face also showed a mature charm. The devil's figure leaned in front of Liang, so that Liang could clearly feel the softness. Next, Liang taught Mrs. Charlie hand in hand. You know, Mrs. Charlie has a fish tail under her, so what should I do? Of course, don't worry at all. After all, except for the fish tail, other places are filled with people. So the question is, where is it? Liang smiled, thinking about it. Everyone who knew it had already guessed it. That's right. He was teaching Mrs. Shaoli. After all, this kind of thing can't be slipped again, otherwise it will be difficult to guarantee a happy life in the future. After teaching Mrs. Shaoli, Liang stopped talking and sat quietly on the sofa, while Mrs. Shaoli did things according to Liang's teaching. She has a cold face, crimson, red. What she did made her shy. Throughout the room, they all exuded a strange aura. Fortunately, there was no intriguing sound. Instead, Liang's comfortable voice flowed slowly and was effectively blocked by the door. The sound insulation effect is quite perfect. Comfortable. The corner of Liang's mouth raised an arc, and said with a smile. Looking at Mrs. Charlie's delicate and beautiful face, the sense of achievement in her heart is naturally self-evident. In particular, this is still a mermaid. The strange beauty brought by the mermaid made Liang feel even more excited. Especially Mrs. Shaoli, the beauty of the iceberg, a woman who is usually cold and noble, can accept his teaching and do this kind of thing for him. This feeling is naturally indescribable. After a while, 1.6 Madame Shaoli blushed and sat on the chair, not daring to look at Liang. When she thought about what happened just now, her neck was flushed, her ears were flushed, her head was lowered, and she did not speak easily. And Liang put his arms around the slender waist and felt the soft feeling. Looking closely, there is still some transparent water on Mrs. Charlie's delicate cheeks. They've been waiting for a long time, let's go out. Mrs. Charlie blushed and said. Good. Liang nodded, stood up from the chair, and said. He looked at the beautiful figure of Mrs. Charlie moving her fish tail, and couldn't help feeling very emotional. Unexpectedly, a beautiful mermaid. Actually, the speed of learning is so efficient. It was relatively unfamiliar at the beginning, but in the following time, Mrs. Charlie showed her strong learning ability and became more and more proficient. Chapter 890-Hody. I'm not stupid enough to die. Fishman Island. Inside the Mermaid Cafe. Hancock, Tautu, Tina and others looked at the picture of Liang and Mrs. Shaoli walking out of the room. Their pretty faces flashed a little doubt. Could it be that an accident happened? Why, it looks like Mrs. Charlie's face is so red. What's the result of the divination? Perona's lovely big eyes blinked and asked. It's okay. Liang waved his hand and said with a smile, it turned out to be the case, but, she said, I might destroy Fishman Island. However, with such a good temper, how could I easily destroy an island? It's just a joke. Quote. Hearing this, the girls rolled their eyes. Are you in a good mood? What about the destruction of the naval branch? Everyone, I'm going to fetch you the specialties of Fishman Island. Madame Shaoli blushed, and when she thought of the scene just now, she felt shy. She hurriedly left and fled. What's the matter with her? Hancock's beautiful eyes were a little suspicious. Maybe, it's the things that came with your women. Liang rolled his eyes and said with a smile. Shameless. Girls blushed, 09 spat lightly, and said. ... The other side. In the street ahead of the Mermaid Cafe. A burly mermaid, wearing a crown and sitting on a huge whale, appeared in this area. This person is naturally Neptune. It is said that the last place to appear is on this side. Neptune scratched his head in doubt and whispered to himself. According to the information he had learned, this area was where Liang and others appeared in the end. Immediately, he jumped off the whale's back, and set about looking around. In the process of searching, he found a strange figure. Hody. Neptune's pupils shrank, looking at the burly Murloc in the dark street, his face became very dignified. The other party appeared here, why? Could it be that this guy Hody also knows about the arrival of Liang's group of people on Fishman Island? You have to find out his details, otherwise, once he plans something to do something to this monster Liang, Fishman Island will be in jeopardy. He doesn't represent Fishman Island, but what he has done will be blamed on the top of Fishman Island. Although I don't think Hody can kill each other. However, as long as the other party is angered, Fishman Island will fall into crisis. Neptune's face was heavy and he thought to himself. He moved faster and quickly followed behind the figure in front of him. Front. In a dark corner. Hody walked step by step, his eyes narrowed, and he felt a powerful breath approaching his back. Reckless. He turned his head and saw a familiar figure. He, who used to be the guardian of Dragon Palace City, naturally knows who the person in front of him is. King Neptune. The two looked at each other, and neither of them spoke first. Chapter 890-Hody, I'm not stupid enough to die. The two looked at each other, and neither of them spoke first. The atmosphere became silent and full of chills. Neptune definitely didn't have any good feelings for a Murloc like Hody, who was staring at Hody with serious eyes. And for Neptune, Hody didn't catch a cold either. Hody, what are you doing here? Neptune took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice. I do things, do you want you to intervene? King Neptune, you forgot, I am no longer your subordinate, don't take the attitude of treating your subordinates, come and talk to me. Hody raised his head, his voice rough and unscrupulous. If I find out, you are doing something harmful to Fishman Island, I will not let you go. Neptune looked bad and said coldly. Hody's nature, he has thoroughly seen through. Therefore, no matter what the other party does, he never dares to relax. Then you can do it now and catch me. But do you have the guts? Neptune, to be honest, I really despise your guts. If it were me, I would kill all the humans who entered Fishman Island. It's a pity that you, the king, don't have the guts and courage. Then let me do what you dare not do. Hody grinned, showing sharp fangs, said. What are you going to do? Neptune's eyes narrowed, and a terrifying aura emanated from his body. Strength, he still has. Although it may not be very strong compared to the people in the Blue Sea. However, in a place like Fishman Island, it can definitely be among the best. What am I going to do? Hody laughed, and approached Neptune step by step, his murderous intent fluctuated, and said, you take the initiative to send it to the door, if I don't try to keep you, wouldn't it be a missed opportunity? It's rare, you didn't take a group of people with you when you went out. Guard, this is a godsend. You can try. Neptune was not afraid at all, holding a trident with a serious face. Hody stopped and took a deep look at Neptune, as if he had thought of something, so he didn't act immediately. The atmosphere is very depressing. The two look at each other. Neptune said, what the hell are you trying to do? Do something big, something that can make Fishman Island famous. Hody sneered, raised his head, and said. You will destroy Fishman Island. Neptune reprimanded, extremely angry. Destroy Fishman Island. Fishman Island will be destroyed only in the hands of people like you. And I will lead Fishman Island to the top, to the world's dance 910. Hody spread his hands, his eyes twinkled, revealing a frenzy. Killing the humans on Fishman Island is your so-called plan to lead Fishman Island to the top. Neptune didn't dare to compliment, and shouted coldly. Hody glanced at Neptune and said bluntly, humans are all dirty and ugly. How can Murlocs and even mermaids survive without killing humans? Only by killing them will they not treat us with fear. Get your hands on it. But you will bring disaster to Fishman Island. Neptune continued. Don't be kidding, my strength never fears any human beings. Today, I'll let you go for a while, and now is not the time to fight with you. Just wait, there will be such a day. After Hadi finished speaking, he was ready to leave. Neptune quickly reprimanded. Don't tell me, are you going to attack Liang now? Liang. Hadi stopped, his eyes flashed heavy pressure, turned his head, looked at Neptune, and sneered, I'm not stupid enough to die. Obviously, he also knew that Liang had come to Fishman Island. However, although he is arrogant and wants to kill human beings very much, it does not mean that he is brainless. Liang's reputation is out, even if he doesn't want to listen to it, he will occasionally hear it. He admits that if he targets Liang, he will really die. Chapter 891-Vanderdeken-X. You are self-aware. I don't worry if you die, but if you are involved in the Fishman Island, you will be deeply sinful and will be cast aside by the thousands of people on the Fishman Island. Neptune breathed a sigh of relief and said. At least, he can be sure that Hodi won't do it easily. Although this guy Hodi is arrogant, he still cherishes his own life. Since he knew Liang's terrifying strength, he would not act rashly. Unless, he is confident that he can crush Liang tilde. Otherwise, he wouldn't even do it. But with Hadi's qualifications, does he really have a chance to crush Liang? If there is such a day, Neptune will kneel down and put his hands on the throne, it will not be a problem. You'd better worry about this guy, Vanderdeken-X. Hodi sneered, his words intriguing. I forgot. Neptune's pupils shrank, and his heart was raised again. In addition to Hodi, there is a notorious pirate here on Fishman Island. Vanderdeken-X. Naturally, he would not be unfamiliar with this name. Moreover, it was this person who made it impossible for his own precious daughter to go out to play casually. The mention of the name made his teeth itch with hatred. When Neptune came back to his senses, he found that Hodi in front of him had disappeared without a trace. He exhaled heavily, turned around, and gradually left the place. Hodi's problem is finally solved. However, there is another target that needs to be guarded against. Vanderdeken-X, this guy is obviously more brainless than Hodi. He may not necessarily know who Liang is and how terrifying his strength is. We have to prevent such an accident from happening. Neptune quickly left this place. In any case, he had to find Vanderdeken-X in advance. In addition to Hodi, only Vanderdeken-X is the most troublesome. Walk out of the street again from the Mermaid Cafe. Liang and the girls looked very relaxed. Coffee is very good. Quote. Hancock's red lips parted slightly, showing a smile in appreciation. Indeed, and the specialties of Fishman Island are quite delicious. Tina nodded slightly and said. These specialties are things they have never eaten before. Naturally, the first time you try the specialties of Fishman Island, you will feel very fresh. However, compared to my husband's cooking skills, it's still too bad. Perona raised her little face and said very proudly. You can talk. The girls looked at Perona one after another, blushing pretty and saying. What's the matter, I'm just telling the truth. Perona's pretty face was also a little red, and her beautiful eyes looked at Liang beside her and said. The specialties there are really good. Liang's eyes flashed past the previous picture and said slowly. Of course, what he said was not the specialty delicacies of Fishman Island. Rather, the unique treatment that Mrs. Charlie gave him in the room was really good. But the girls obviously didn't know what Liang was thinking, and thought they were praising the food in the Mermaid Cafe. Where are we going next? Kurla made a pretty face and asked. Most of the Fishman Island has basically been visited once, and some places are simply omitted because of the long distance. After all, it seemed that there was nowhere to go. Do you want to go to Dragon Palace? Chapter 891-Vanderdeken-X. Do you want to go to Dragon Palace? Liang's eyes narrowed slightly, and the huge castle in the distance asked with a smile. Dragon Palace. Can you? Khalifa also asked with a bit of curiosity, and her delicate face was looking forward to it. If they could go to Ryugu Castle, they would naturally approve with both hands. However, the mermaids or murlocs here are not very entertaining to humans. Therefore, it is relatively difficult for humans to enter Dragon Palace City. It's just that they know that there is nothing that can stymie their husbands. If you want to go, I'll take you there. Liang smiled, as if stating a very ordinary thing. Then go, Dragon Palace. The beautiful eyes of the girls flickered, and they nodded quickly. Let's go. With a smile on his face, Liang led the girls away from the street of the Mermaid Cafe. Inside the Mermaid Cafe, Mrs. Xiaoli looked at Liang and the others who were gradually moving away through the transparent glass, her beautiful brows furrowed, revealing an imperceptible hesitation. She is still not sure whether the direction of things will be like her divination. If so, Fishman Island is at stake. Thinking of this, she naturally recalled what happened in the room, her pretty face flushed, and her beautiful eyes unconsciously looked around, trying to divert her attention. 0 katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. Mrs. Charlie, what's the matter with you? Kemi looked at Mrs. Charlie's blushing face and asked. No, nothing. Mrs. Xiaoli was a little flustered, and said quickly, go to work, I'll play home and rest for a while. Today, you can leave the coffee shop 2 hours earlier. Oh, good. Kemi looked at Mrs. Charlie's back in confusion, and her heart was full of strange thoughts. What was the reason that made the always calm Mrs. Xiaoli panic? Moreover, Madame Xiaoli's continuous beating just now really turned red. Now that Liang has left the cafe, she will not be so nervous and afraid. Therefore, the things you think about will inevitably increase a lot. 00. Soon, Liang and others came to the location in Central Park. In the center, there is a small pool, and the water stains are scattered in the sky, showing a pattern similar to a circle, which is very beautiful. Not far away, a four-legged murloc wearing a small top hat, with upturned hair and a beard, with multiple necklaces hanging from his body, looks vulgar, and is walking towards the pool step by step. At the same time, when he saw Liang and the girls around him, he was shocked. It's even more beautiful than the mermaid princess. Also, the rest of the beauty is definitely in the top ranks. Why, such a group of beautiful women suddenly appeared. Wait, the men around them are so jealous. Why does this man have so many beautiful women? Vanderdaken IX was jealous in his eyes, staring at Liang, wishing to kill him. Such eyes with obvious killing intent were inevitably noticed by Liang. My lord, there is a guy who doesn't have long eyes and has murderous intentions towards you. Hancock's pretty face was frosty, and his tone was full of murderous intent. Little characters. Liang smiled and said, you guys wait here, I'll meet him. Let's just get rid of him. The girls smiled and said slowly. Don't worry, you won't be able to see him in a while. Liang waved his hand and walked towards the position of Vanderdeken X step by step. Chapter 892 Hurry up, I'm in a hurry. Hey, he's here, this human being is very unpleasant to my eyes. Then, let him die. Vanderdaken IX's eyes flashed fiercely, and he looked very proud as he watched Liang walk step by step. With the target fruit, he believes that no one who comes into contact can escape his pursuit. As long as he can touch the opponent, he will definitely be able to kill the opponent. At this time, Li Ang's face was calm. He walked in front of Vanderdecken X and asked with a smile, "I've come to you, if you want to kill me, please hurry up, I'm in a hurry." Huh? Vanderdecken IX was stunned. What do you mean? Stand and let yourself kill. But then again, how could the other party see that he wanted to kill him? Hurry up, don't be mother-in-law or mother-in-law, what kind of person do you look like? Since you are a pirate, you have to kill me decisively. Come on, kill me. 260 zeros, Li Ang said with a smile, looking at Vanderdecken X. Seeing Li Ang's smile, for some unknown reason, Vanderdecken X always felt that his spine was wet with cold sweat. Why are you so afraid? He was very puzzled. How could he be afraid? This is obviously unscientific. Afterwards, he took a deep breath, raised his hand slowly, and patted Li Ang on the shoulder. After seeing that the other party didn't dodge, he finally showed a triumphant smile. You are going to die. Vanderdecken X laughed and said. The crowd around was surging. People who didn't know his identity before came to watch. There was a commotion. Yes, it's Vanderdecken X, my god, he actually entered Fishman Island. Let's go, I heard that he is a murderous devil. Also, drinking human blood and eating human flesh is too scary. Run away, notify the guards, and let them come over quickly. Quote. There was chaos, and the people at the scene felt very terrified when they saw Vanderdecken X. Visible. Vanderdecken IX was on Fishman Island and was famous for his fierceness. Aren't you afraid? Vanderdecken X felt the feared gaze and enjoyed it very much. However, he also found Li Ang in front of him, indifferent, still his face was calm. Why be afraid? Li Ang asked back and smiled. They are all trembling for my existence. They are all afraid that I will kill them. And you are not afraid of death. Vanderdecken X narrowed his eyes slightly and said coldly. That's because you can't kill me at all. Li Ang waved his hand and said calmly. Arrogant. Vanderdecken X snorted coldly and took several steps quickly. The day after tomorrow. He looked at a cactus-like weapon next to him, touched it with his hand, and shouted, Go. Kill him for me. The entire cactus bucket rose into the air and slammed towards Li Ang's position. At the same time, Li Ang looked at the cactus that fell from the sky, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he shook his head. The ability of this fruit is really too weak. Finished talking. His right hand was covered with armed color, and he punched directly. Boom. The entire cactus turned into a piece of powder and fell to the ground. This scene made Vanderdecken X stunned, his lips trembling, and he almost forgot that he was in the middle of the battlefield. If you do it, then I have a reason to kill you. Li Ang laughed, recalling what Mrs. Charlie said. Although I made a guarantee, but when others did it to me, I just fought back. Shouldn't it be his own initiative to kill, right? Chapter 892 hurry up, I'm in a hurry. And LT, 29 and GT. Shouldn't it be his own initiative to kill, right? Well, definitely not. He thought to himself, and walked to the position of King Vanderdecken X step by step, smiling all over his face. His smile, in the eyes of Vanderdecken X, seemed like a devil's smile, making the latter's scalp numb and timid in his heart. Didn't you want to kill me just now? I'm here, hurry up. Li Ang walked towards Vanderdecken X step by step, smiling. You monster. But I'm not someone you can laugh at. Vanderdecken X roared and walked frantically to the surroundings. Whether it was a cactus, or a huge stone, an axe, etc., all of them were inspired by his devil fruit ability, and they attacked Li Ang crazily. It's a little like it. Li Ang applauded slightly, looking at the overwhelming weapons. His body exuded a terrifying aura. Buzz. The overlord domineering arrogance shrouded away, and there was a substantial attack. Boom. Huge pits appeared on the ground, and these weapons in the sky were all bounced off, gradually cracked, and some were even smashed directly. My God! The surrounding mermaids and murlocs were shocked zero. Looking at the terrifying pit that appeared on the ground, and then looking at Liang, unable to speak. It was so terrifying that without doing anything, a huge pit appeared on the ground. How strong is this human being? This human, is going to destroy our Fishman Island. A fishman was horrified and couldn't help but utter a word. This sentence immediately made the mermaids and murlocs in the audience terrified. If this human wants to destroy Fishman Island, can they block each other? As a result, nature is impossible. It seems that even the great pirate Vanderdecken X can't help each other. Can these people stop them? Panic spread, and a little mermaid slumped on the ground, unable to move. Your attacks are not enough. Liang looked at Vanderdecken X and said lightly. Who the hell are you? Vanderdecken X took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice. He did not believe that a human with such terrifying strength would be a nobody. My name is Liang, I think you should have heard of this name. Liang smiled and said bluntly. Liang. Vanderdecken X's pupils shrank, and his heart was tumbling. That's right. He had indeed heard the name, and he had heard it often. It's just that he didn't see the face of this man from the newspaper. Unexpectedly, he was so unlucky today that he met 0.6 head-on. Moreover, he also took the initiative to provoke each other. For a moment, he felt a deep regret in his heart. Liang, who can suppress the navy? Vanderdecken X gasped, thinking that his ancestors, as pirates, were constantly arrested by the navy. And Liang, who was in front of him, was able to forcibly shake the power of the navy by himself, and he shuddered. This is simply a humanoid monster. Surrounding. A group of fish people and mermaids were stunned. Liang. Is that Liang? That, a monster more powerful than our benefactor, Whitebeard. How did he come to our Fishman Island? My God, are we going to be invaded by him? Quote. A group of mermaids and murlocs, the fear in their hearts is infinitely magnified. Chapter 893 You mean a lump on the ground. The name of Liang, even here on Fishman Island, has spread all over the place. All murlocs and mermaids know the horror of Liang. It is for this reason that when they discovered that the human beings they were seeing were actually the legendary terrifying monsters, their feelings were naturally self-evident. In particular, Liang is still doing it now. As the weak, seeing the strength of the strong, they will not have much sense of security in their hearts. And Liang is human. They are murlocs and mermen, and they always have a vigilance against humans. What we have seen today is the manipulation of murlocs by humans. Although they disliked Vanderdecken X very much, in the final analysis, Vanderdecken X were all murlocs and belonged to the same ethnic group as them. If Liang wants to do it, our Fishman Island will be finished. A group of murlocs sighed inwardly and shook their heads. At the same time, Vanderdecken X looked at Liang solemnly and said, how about we stop here? He was afraid. Liang's terrifying strength made him feel scared. In particular, the sense of crisis that came from his heart did not allow him to continue fighting. If he continued to fight, he would really die here, as his sixth sense thought. If he could 133, he would never dare to fight against Liang in front of him. He was full of regrets, knowing that he shouldn't provoke human beings casually. Why are human beings such terrifying monsters? This is completely different from the human slaves he imprisoned. Hold up, I don't want to. Liang shook his head and said very boringly, well, if you can hold onto my hand, I'll let you out of here, how about that? Are you humiliating me? Vanderdecken X looked at Liang coldly and said in shock. Although he knew that Liang was very strong, he had never really seen the horror of Liang. And when he heard that the other party was actually talking to him like this, he was definitely not good. You can think so too. Liang nodded casually and said bluntly. Damn. Vanderdecken X took a few steps back, distanced himself from Liang, rolled his eyes, and said, "You wait, sooner or later, I will kill you." Finished talking. He quickly prepared to flee. After all, with his fruit ability, he can attack faraway places. In this way, he doesn't need to waste his physical strength fighting against Liang here. "Can you run away?" Liang smiled, and the figure disappeared, appearing beside Vanderdeken X, said. "Well." Vanderdeken X's face changed dramatically. He quickly moved his direction, and distanced himself from Liang. However, the next second, Liang appeared beside him again. No matter how he escaped, he could not escape Liang's pursuit. "I fought with you." Vanderdeken X did not escape, grabbing a huge stone and using the fruit ability. Boom! The stone was abandoned and slammed towards Liang's position. "It seems that you can only use your abilities to do this kind of thing. Then you are just a porter." Liang glanced at Vanderdeken X and said boringly. He smashed the stone with a punch. "If it's just this kind of strength, it's embarrassing. Vanderdeken X will die quickly." Die. Vanderdeken X continued to utilize the fruit power. Chapter 893 "You mean a lump on the ground?" And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. And LT, 31 and GT. Vanderdeken X continued to utilize the fruit power. However, his attacks have always been withered and tasteless, with no sense of combat at all. You can only use the fruit's ability continuously to smash the surrounding things towards Liang's position. But with such an attack, how could Liang have no choice? "You're going to die." Liang did not want to continue to entangle with Vanderdeken X. If this kind of battle is very boring, there is no need for him to waste time. Mrs. Charlie shouldn't say that I broke my promise. After all, he did it first. Besides, I'm now fighting violence on Fishman Island. How to say, no matter how bad it is, if you don't give a reward to a good citizen, you have to give something good. How can you say that I broke my promise? Naturally, it does not exist. Liangxin AJBD thought, smiling even more. Finally, I found a reason to kill Vanderdeken X without being said to have broken the promise. With a notorious pirate like Vanderdeken X, everyone should be shouting and fighting on Fishman Island. Oneself, killing the other party, obviously in the name of killing harm, what is the crime? He calmed down in his heart, his eyes looked at Vanderdeken X in front of him, and he made no secret of the murderous intent in his eyes, and the corner of his mouth raised an arc, and the speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he appeared beside Vanderdeken X and whispered, "Are there any last words? I'm more humane. Go to hell." Vanderdeken X was startled, and after reacting, he kicked out violently. Liang's figure flashed, easily dodging the opponent's attack, shaking his head and said, "It seems that you have no last words. If this is the case, then you will die." Finished talking. He punched seemingly light and fluttering, covering the domineering look of the armed force, and slammed it on the forehead of Vanderdeken X. Boom! Vanderdeken X was directly bombarded and fell to the ground. A huge pit appeared on the ground, and he was like a dead dog, unable to move and paralyzed on the ground. It can be seen that his forehead was cracked. Blood flowed, spreading around the ground. Even his body was shaken by the shock, his flesh and blood were blurred, and the whole person could not see his face clearly. Just like a blood man, he can't even tell the structure of his body. Dead. Too weak too. Liang shook off the blood stains on his hands, looked at Vanderdeken X on the ground, and muttered to himself. I only used less than 10% of my strength. With this punch, Vanderdeken X's death method seems a bit terrifying. However, he didn't think he was too cruel. It can only be said that this guy, Vanderdeken X, is too weak. To die like this is also considered too weak. Dead, Vanderdeken X, killed. A Murloc's lips trembled, his expression full of horror, said. The entire surrounding field was completely boiling. Seeing that humans killed the Murlocs, the fear in their hearts naturally could not be contained. My God, human, killed Vanderdecken X. Is he going to do something to us? Fishman Island, it's going to be destroyed. Humans, human beings, he will definitely slaughter us. Quote. In the chaos of the crowd, Neptune came all the way and saw the chaotic scene, and even he was startled. What's the situation? He hurriedly looked at Liang, and then at the terrified mermaid and Murloc. Where's Vanderdecken X? He couldn't help but asked. Liang saw Neptune's appearance and replied with a smile, You mean, that lump on the ground? Immediately, Neptune followed Liang's gaze and saw the bloody scene on the ground. His throat was dry and he swallowed. Chapter 894 How can there be no reward for eliminating harm for the people? Died. Vanderdecken X. Is it so dead? The ground, Neptune's body stiffened. He thought about many scenes, but he still didn't expect that Vanderdecken X would simply die in front of him. Does this mean that the _fruit ability disappears? After the white star, do not have to be attacked by an axe. Thinking of this, Neptune took a deep breath and looked at Liang with a bit of excitement and a bit of fear in his eyes, blending together. At this time, there were still murmurs of fear from the crowd. His Majesty Neptune is here, we will definitely see a turning point, right? Our Fishman Island will not be destroyed. But this monster is really strong. Humans are too strong, won't we Murlocs and mermen become slaves? Quote. Well. Neptune raised his brows, and naturally heard the voices around him. He first glanced at Liang in a panic, and after seeing that the other party's expression was still calm, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. As long as Liang didn't get angry, everything would be resolved easily. Speaking of which, Your Majesty Neptune, do you think what I have done is killing harm in my name? Liang looked at Neptune and asked with a smile. Yes. Neptune was dumbfounded and nodded immediately. He really didn't expect Liang to say these words. What did the other party want to say? Then, I can also be regarded as eradicating a big tumor for Fishman Island. As the king of Fishman Island, how are you going to reward me, a person who has made merit? Liang looked at Neptune and asked with a smile. Ah! Neptune was stunned, his eyes rolled rapidly, and he asked, What reward do you want? The key is that the reward from Fishman Island, will the other party like it? As for the reward, it's up to you. If I ask for the reward in person, it's not very good. So, what kind of reward is, you can decide for yourself. It's impossible to get rid of harm in the name of no reward, right? In this case, others will not do such unnecessary things in the future. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and continued. Okay, I see. Neptune took a deep breath and nodded. This reward must be treated with caution. After all, the person in front of him is Liang. If the reward is too light, it seems that he does not pay much attention to the other party. Numerous thoughts flashed through Neptune's mind. Although I don't know what kind of reward to give. However, the reward must be generous, and that's right. Then, let's deal with the matter here. Liang glanced at the group of mermaids and Murlocs, and said lightly. For these mermaids or Murlocs, he has absolutely no mood to explain to them. The weak like to think indiscriminately, whether others are harmful to them. As a strong man, Liang believes that he does not need to explain to the weak. These Murlocs are afraid, it's their business. Liang can't control what they think, and he doesn't need to. Anyway, it won't affect him. Seeing these terrified mermaids and Murlocs, he secretly thought. The sorrow of the weak. Chapter 894 How can there be no reward for eliminating harm for the people? NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 33 and GT. The sorrow of the weak. It has nothing to do with race, only strength. Okay, I see. After Neptune nodded, looking at the crowd around him, Lang said, Don't panic, everyone, Vanderdecken IX will die. Moreover, Mr. Liang also made it clear that he will not do anything to our Fishman Island. So, you can rest assured. If no one takes the initiative to provoke Mr. Liang, I think Mr. Liang will not harm any of you. Of course, if you don't know how to live or die, you can try to provoke Mr. Liang. If you die, don't blame me for not reminding you beforehand. It's just like Vanderdecken X today. Quote. After these words, Liang made a lot of changes to Neptune. This king is not a soft-hearted person. It's just that I don't usually show it. His Majesty Neptune has said it, then we can rest assured. Aren't you afraid that humans will attack us? Don't think about it, tell the truth. If this human wants to destroy our Fishman Island, it's really easy, something that can be done very easily. You don't know this human's name. His name is Liang. Quote. Numerous murlocs and mermaids finally breathed a sigh of relief. 0 katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. As long as they don't do it, they won't be too scared. In particular, Neptune's words have deeply gained their trust. In addition, some people who understand and can understand, Liang really doesn't want to do something to them. Otherwise, with the terrifying strength of the opponent, destroying Fishman Island is just a matter of turning over. And they, in the final analysis, are just worrying about nothing. A very clear sentence. They are not enough for Liang to kill. There is no need to be euphemistic. If the other party wants to kill them, Fishman Island will be destroyed in an instant. This is something that all murlocs and mermaids have to admit. Mr. Liang, it's done. Neptune looked at Liang and said with a smile, I don't know, is Mr. Liang going to be a guest at Dragon Palace City? I must do my best to entertain you. I would be more than happy if I could. Liang nodded with a smile and said. This time, it saves a lot of trouble. With Neptune leading the way, it couldn't be easier to enter the Dragon Palace. That's right. Liang looked at the corpse of King Vanderdecken X, and then at Neptune, with a meaningful smile, and said, Your Majesty Neptune, I have helped you a lot. You are not ready, thank me. What? Confused, Neptune asked. But did you just talk about the reward? Why did you suddenly do yourself a big favor and want to thank you? The reward, with your personal acknowledgement, is clearly scored. Liang explained with a smile, in the name of getting rid of evil, it is to get rid of a tumor for Fishman Island. As a king, you naturally have to reward those who have made merit. Besides that, I killed King Vanderdecken IX. That is, to relieve the crisis of your daughter. Am I right? As a father, when you saw that your daughter was rescued by me, don't you think? Without some representation. Finished talking. It was only then that Neptune realized, and looked at Liang with a bit of confusion. He really didn't think so much. However, is Liang in front of him really not a businessman? How? Let's talk, a set. He didn't seem to feel that Liang was a powerful monster. On the contrary, if the businessman is used as a metaphor for the other party, it will feel more appropriate. NLT, 34 and GT. Chapter 895 Dragon Palace as a guest. Cough cough. Neptune coughed dryly and said, Thanks are necessary. As a father, seeing that his daughter was rescued, he must thank him well. So, Mr. Liang, don't worry. When I return to Dragon Palace City, I will open the treasure house and let you choose 2 pieces at will. One is as a reward for killing evil in your name, and the other is my personal thank you to you. What do you think? Finished talking. Neptune also looked at Liang nervously. He was really afraid that Liang would look down on his treasure trove. After all, Li Ang's identity was here. Well, not bad. Li Ang said with a smile. Rewards or something, he doesn't pay much attention to what it is. It's just that you want to get something you should get. Mr. Li Ang, please. Nipton said respectfully, slowly. Lead the way. Li Ang nodded, walked in the direction of the girls step by step, and said with a smile, your husband's ability is still very powerful. No, you can directly take your Dragon Palace city. Hancock, Peach Rabbit, and others blushed. Under the leadership of Li Ang, he followed Neptune all the way and quickly left this area. The remaining group of Murlocs and mermaids still had lingering fears. They looked at the body of Vanderdeken X on the ground and sighed. Although it is a tumor, it is also a Murloc. Go and bury him. A Murloc suggested and said. Some of the rest are in favor, some are against. After all, Vanderdeken X has done more than one or two bad things, and naturally it will not arouse their goodwill. However, is that monster really not going to attack us again? Probably not. He doesn't need to lie at all. If he wants to do it, he can do it just now. And, to be honest, His Majesty Neptune can't help the other party at all. Yeah, we can only pray that we don't provoke him. If we provoke him and cause a lot of trouble for Fishman Island, it's our fault. Quote. A group of Murlocs and mermen are talking. The other side. Li Ang led the girls and successfully arrived at the gate of Dragon Palace City. A long dragon winds the whole city, the magnificent buildings are very spectacular and the area is huge. Here is the most famous place in Fishman Island, Dragon Palace. The residence of the Fishman Island royal family, where Neptune and his children live. The place is heavily guarded, with guards patrolling everywhere. As the most famous point of Fishman Island, there must be no shortage of guards. With the existence of people like Hody, Fishman Island may not be as peaceful as it seems on the surface. Just like just now, Vanderdeken IX was killed. Open the door. With a serious face, Neptune ordered the guards in front of him, saying, Yes, Your Majesty Neptune. Several guards opened the door one after another. Mr. Li Ang, please. Neptune looked at Li Ang with a respectful expression and said. This scene fell into the eyes of several guards, and they were all shocked. As a king, Neptune actually treats a human being so respectfully. Who is this human? Identity is too scary. Even His Majesty Neptune did not dare to expose the king's heirs in front of the other party. You are too kind. Li Ang smiled, but did not shirk, and led the girls into the Dragon Palace City in one step. Into the eye. Chapter 895 Dragon Palace City as a guest. NLT, 35 and GT. Into the eye. From here, you can see the scene of returning to the ground. The fish are constantly sliding past, and the scene is extremely spectacular. Seeing the bottom of the sea, Li Ang couldn't help but see the shadow of the terrifying creature in his head. The huge eyeballs are close to the terrifying body shape of a few hundred meters. Visible. When the real body shape is revealed, I am afraid that it will not be less than 5 kilometers. Possibly, it may be close to tens of thousands of meters. I don't know, if it gets out of trouble. What a horrific slaughter it will make on this sea. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking to himself. Mr. Li Ang. Looking at Li Ang's absent-minded figure, Neptune couldn't help but let out a low voice. Sorry, was thinking about something. Li Ang shook his head with a smile on his face. It doesn't matter, the front is the hall of Dragon Palace. If you don't mind, just wait for a while. I will immediately instruct my staff to cook a table of the most characteristic delicacies of Fishman Island for you. Neptune thought for a moment and said. That feeling is the best. Li Ang accepted it with a smile, but did not refuse. It is also very good to come to Dragon Palace and try other people's craftsmanship. By the way, Your Majesty Neptune, have you heard of some legends under the sea? Li Ang looked at Neptune beside him and asked. He was testing whether Neptune knew about the existence of these things. It stands to reason that Neptune should know these things. After all, to survive on a fish-man island tens of thousands of meters under the sea, more or less, you will know some of these things. In particular, Neptune was also a king. There will definitely be records in the books of the past dynasties. And the existence of this monster life happens to be a threat to Fishman Island. So, the record is definitely indispensable. Each generation of kings is responsible for the safety of Fishman Island. And this creature is the biggest hazard to the safety of Fishman Island. Legend. Neptune's expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, "There have been quite a few. I don't know, which ones are you referring to?" "The monster at the bottom of the sea." Seeing the change in Neptune's expression, Liang said bluntly. "Well." Neptune's pupils shrank, and he lost his voice. "Mr. Liang, have you seen it?" "It?" Liang asked. The interest on his face became more and more intense. "No, what did you say?" Neptune is confused. Isn't it what he imagined? "If you're talking about that monster with a few hundred meters in each eyeball. I think I've seen him already, and it's still up close." Liang's mouth Qianhao raised an arc, and smiled. "I remember that after I left, I felt that suction was generated there. Thinking about it, a lot of lives should have died there." "Sure enough." Neptune's face became solemn, and he said, "Mr. Liang, it is already a very remarkable move that you can leave its mouth. Once it is swallowed by it. I think, with your strength, I am afraid that you will not be able to leave." "What the hell is it?" Liang looked at Neptune and asked again. "There are too many things involved here." Neptune sighed. His expression looked very depressed. "I originally thought that the safety of Fishman Island just need to take into account the pirates who came here. However, when I learned some experience and knowledge from the literature, time, I found out that Fishman Island is not as simple as I thought." Quote. "Can you tell me?" Liang asked with a smile on his face. NLT, 36 and GT. Chapter 896 Nose Arc. "Of course. Although this is missing, I believe, Mr. Liang, you will not say it. If the residents of Fishman Island know these things, it will inevitably cause a huge panic." Neptune took a deep breath and said, "Nature." Liang nodded. He was just curious. On the side, Hancock, Tautu and others also showed curious eyes. At this moment, Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Minister Zuo came quickly and shouted anxiously. "Minister of the Left, what's the matter?" Neptune raised his brows and asked. This. Minister Zuo saw Liang for the first time. His whole body stiffened and his throat was dry. "He is Mr. Liang, and I have invited him to our Dragon Palace city as a guest." Neptune did not hesitate, and explained to the left minister. "So it is." Minister Zuo accepted it in his heart, but when he saw Liang's existence, he was unavoidable and panicked. "This is a real monster, a strong man, who can destroy the terrible existence of Fishman Island. How can he not be afraid?" "Is something wrong?" Neptune asked straight to the point. "I found out that Hody and the others seemed to have to move. So, they didn't dare to stay, and came back quickly to report. My people are still monitoring them, but they don't dare to get too close. There are powerful people among them. If our people get too close, I'm afraid they will find out." Minister Zuo quickly and truthfully reported. "They have a plan." Neptune frowned and muttered to himself. "This guy Hody, he has always been on guard. There is a plan in place, which means that it is definitely not a good thing. Continue to watch him. If there is any change, come back and report." Neptune pondered for a moment and commanded. "Yes, Your Majesty." Minister Zuo came quickly and left quickly. In a blink of an eye, his figure disappeared without a trace, and he didn't know if he was too afraid of Liang, or for some other reason. After Minister Zuo left, Neptune felt a little relieved, looked at Liang, and said with a smile, "Mr. Liang, please come inside. After we go to the hall, I will explain it to you in detail ajeg." "Good." Liang nodded and followed Neptune to the hall smoothly. The hall is resplendent and richly decorated. The interior decoration and structure of Dragon Palace City are naturally extraordinary. Immediately, Neptune ordered the staff, arranged some food, and sat on a special chair. His size was so huge that a normal chair simply wasn't enough to support him. Liang, Hancock, Khalifa and others also sat on the chairs one after another. "This matter should start 800 years ago." Neptune sighed, his eyes flashed a little dignified, said. Chapter 896_Noah's Ark. NLT, 37 and GT. Neptune sighed, his eyes flashed a little dignified, said. 800 years ago. Liang's eyes flashed and he asked with a smile, "That is to say, that monster has lived for a full 800 years. "No, it's not." Neptune shook his head quickly and said, "It's not recorded in the books that it lived for 800 years. Rather, it existed thousands of years ago." 1,000 years ago. Liang was a little surprised, but he didn't speak, quietly waiting for Neptune's words. A life that can live for thousands of years, no matter how ordinary its species and bloodlines are, its strength is definitely not ordinary. To live so long, even an ordinary tortoise must have become an elite. Therefore, Liang knew that the strength of that monster would be very strong. Of course, he wasn't afraid. If he was on land, he was sure that he could kill this monster. "I think, Mr. Liang, you should also have some guesses. A monster that can live for thousands of years, naturally need not say more about its strength. Indeed, its strength is very terrifying. If it wasn't for its immobility, the bottom of the ocean would be lifeless." Neptune spoke again and said. "This also means that that monster has the terrifying power to sweep all life under the sea." Next, Neptune said, "I read from the books, it is recorded like this. 800 years ago, the ancestors discovered the existence of a monster. This monster can absorb the life of living creatures, thereby gaining a greater vitality." Quote. The ancestors speculated that this monster may have lived a long time. However, the monster was very strange and could not move in one place. The ancestor thought that this monster was sealed. At that time, the ancestors were very shocked. The monsters at that time were also very terrifying. Actually, they were sealed like this. Who is it? Has such a terrifying ability? Quote. In the following time, the ancestors observed the movements of the monsters every time. From this, they learned that the monsters would eat every once in a while. Moreover, the amount of food was very terrifying. In order to fear that the Fishman Island will suffer. At that time, the ancestors united with the human beings and wanted to send the Fishman Island to the land and survive as an island on the land. For this reason, Noah's Ark appeared. Noah can send all the life in our Fishman Island to life at sea. However, Noah's Ark has another ability. That is, for that monster, the ability to prevent the sudden outbreak of the monster and bring disaster to the Fishman Island. The ancestors devoted their life efforts, and Noah completed it. Quote. In the hall. Only Neptune's voice remains, which has a long history. "Noah, can you still suppress that monster?" The corners of Liang's mouth twitched slightly as he asked. Yes, the ancestors used some mysterious formations found in the seabed at that time, and then combined some incomplete fragments obtained in the seabed. Finally, I found out how the monster was sealed. It is because of the existence of these formations that the monster was suppressed and unable to move. It can only keep its own life, and there is no old death here. After Neptune nodded, he continued talking. The ancestor you are talking about should be the mermaid princess 800 years ago, right? Liang asked with a smile. Yes. Neptune nodded and did not deny it. After being admitted, Liang felt relieved. It is a mermaid princess who can control the sea kings, so it seems to be a normal thing to create Noah to resist that monster. In the sea, huge sea kings also exist. The sea kings of thousands of meters also exist. Although it moved, I still have a ton of questions. Li Ang's eyes flashed and he asked, what is the origin of the formation at the bottom of the sea? Also, what are the fragments that your ancestors got? What is the monster? Where did it come from? Who seals? Chapter 897_Undersea Civilization. These things have to go back thousands of years. Neptune's eyes were lost, and he said slowly, the ancestors, based on some remnants, showed that there was an extremely brilliant civilization on the seabed. The formation and the incomplete fragments are all left over from here. Down. This splendid civilization disappeared without a trace for some reason. But these things left in the seabed can be judged. This civilization was very bright at the time. I don't know if it was thousands of years ago or tens of thousands of years ago. All in all, the era is very long. There is no way to verify it. Listening to Neptune's words, Li Ang asked, you mean, this monster came from that civilization? Then, the seal also came from that civilization. In this case, this monster has more than 1,000 lives. Years are so easy. Quote. Yes. Neptune was naturally clear and nodded. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit it. This monster has lived countless times longer than he imagined. In this world, does life really exist for such a long time? Li Ang shook the first-generation Goosh in the handshake, his eyes narrowed slightly. The fact that this monster can live for so long is a surprise to him, but it is also acceptable. Just as he mastered the first generation of ghosts, he could harvest other people's lives to improve his own. Come to think of it, this monster eats food, not only to replenish its own hunger, but also to increase its vitality to maintain a longer survival time. This is the first time Li Ang has seen such a monster. But how did the so-called submarine civilization disappear that could suppress such monsters? All this, the time involved, is too long to be verified. 800 years ago, even a world government did not exist. At that time, the monsters under the sea had been sealed. I don't know if it's thousands of years or tens of thousands of years. All in all, the existence of this monster is unimaginably long. That civilization, what civilization is it? Li Ang looked at Neptune and continued to ask. He was also somewhat curious about that civilization. The girls all listened with great anticipation. It seems that this submarine civilization is quite brilliant. I can't tell what kind of civilization it is. However, what they have left is amazing. If you want, Mr. Li Ang, I can take out 2 broken fragments. Although the fragments have no power, they were definitely found from the bottom of the sea. Moreover, they were definitely the product of that civilization. Just use it to offset your repayment to Fishman Island and to my daughter. What do you think? I can't ask for it. Li Ang's eyes flickered, he nodded and said. Originally, he didn't know what reward he would get, but now, he already has an eye. Wait a minute. Neptune stood up and gradually left the hall. Obviously, he went to get the fragments of those civilizations. If that's true. Li Ang's eyes flickered, he couldn't help but took out a lock from his arms and laughed, if it's really what Neptune said. Then, does what I'm holding come from that civilization? He thought about it and felt that the probability of this possibility is quite high. They are all obtained from the bottom of the sea. Moreover, the origins are very mysterious. If he didn't know what to expect, the lock on his own hand should have a lot to do with that civilization. Civilization. Hancock's red lips parted slightly, revealing a bit of suspicion. In the end, what is it? In the past, there was a splendid civilization on the bottom of the sea. Why was there no record on the ground? Chapter 897_Undersea Civilization. NLT, 39 and GT. Why was there no record on the ground? Is it because the civilization under the sea did not appear on land? Or is life in civilization unable to appear on land? This possibility is slim. How can a civilization that can suppress that monster be unable to develop something that appears on land? Therefore, there must be some special reason why life in civilization does not leave traces. Soon, Neptune is back. Holding a black box in his hand, he walked up to Liang and said very seriously, "Mr. Liang, the broken fragments here are left by the ancestors back then. If you need it, take it. Then I'll be more respectful than obedient." Liang smiled, but you were welcome and took the box directly. Under Neptune's gaze, Liang gradually opened the box with both hands. What appeared in the eyes were locks, of different sizes. Well, Liang's expression is very wonderful. Since seeing these locks, his expression has been quite strange. It seems that there is nothing wrong with what he guessed. What Aokiji got is what came from that civilization. It's just that Aokiji didn't think to come to Fishman Island to seek the truth, otherwise, maybe he would already know the truth of what he experienced. "Mr. Liang, what's the matter?" Looking at Liang's expression, Nipton couldn't help but ask, "Do you know something about it?" "No, I just thought, what are these locks?" Liang shook his head and said, "Is it possible that these locks are the currency of that civilization? The currency used for transactions. This is still very possible. Maybe, it's some kind of energy substance." Neptune thought for a moment and replied, "How do you see it?" Liang looked at Neptune and asked. "In the records left by the ancestors, it is explained. These locks are not locks, but are made of a special material. We have never seen this material before. In addition, the patterns on the surface of these locks, in fact, may be some formations. The ancestors studied the formations here, and only 340 created a formation for Noah to resist that monster. Also, there may be some kind of energy in this lock." Neptune spoke slowly and explained. "Energy." Liang looked at the lock in his hand and whispered to himself. In the box, there are a total of 6 locks, all of different sizes. The textures are also different. If you add the locks he owns, then there are 7 in total. Are these things left over from that civilization? What does this mean? Suddenly, Liang felt that the clues were interrupted again. Come to think of it, locks are not the key to exploring that civilization. It's just that one is more common. Either money, or something like energy. Liang can't talk about disappointment, there are gains and unforeseen things. For that so-called civilization, he became even more curious in his heart. If there is a chance, he has to return to the area around the previous monster to observe. If this civilization really existed, then it would seem very strange that it disappeared. Such a tyrannical civilization can never be said to disappear. Even natural disasters cannot destroy this powerful civilization. For example, the monster didn't die, that's the simple truth. The monsters are not dead, and the life of the entire civilization will all be killed. Chapter 898-Formation. The entire civilization, since it can suppress monsters, must be stronger than monsters. If it is a natural disaster, the monsters are not dead, and the civilization will disappear. From this, it can be judged that the disappearance of civilization was not due to natural disasters. I don't know if it's because of a strong enemy, or some other reason. Your Majesty. A personal fish carried the food and gradually came. Put it on the table. Neptune said slowly. A group of people carrying food put all the specialties of Fishman Island on the table. All are vegetarian. Mermaid, do not eat meat. Therefore, what Liang saw was mostly pastries, desserts and vegetables. This is the biggest point of Fishman Island, there is no meat. Mr. Liang, please take it slow. Nipton looked at Liang with great respect and smiled. I'll try it, the special food of Fishman Island. Liang laughed and tried the food in front of him a little. I have tried several dishes, all of them feel that the taste is okay. Especially the sweet and fresh ingredients that are not greasy at all, I really like them. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also made their move. He tried the taste of the food and smiled with satisfaction. As for Liang, he continued to observe the 6 locks in his hand, and then he took out the seventh lock, which was the one given to him by Qingzi. Mr. Liang, it turns out that you got it too. Neptune looked at Liang, deeply surprised, and smiled. Seeing that lock, the unique texture and color can be distinguished naturally, and it is basically the same as the lock he took out, except for the area. It was given by someone else. Liang explained with a smile, if I hadn't gotten this lock, I probably wouldn't have appeared here. It's even more impossible, seeing so many novel things. The civilization of the seabed really surprised him. However, the disappearance of this civilization revealed a strangeness everywhere. If it disappears passively, then the civilization will definitely leave some clansmen. But for thousands of years, I haven't heard of this. Presumably, if it's not that they don't exist, it's that they don't want to be noticed at all. There is another possibility. In addition to passive disappearance, there is active disappearance. It's just that no one knows where their entire civilization disappeared. Speaking of which, what Liang is more willing to believe is the latter guess. The entire civilization took the initiative to leave this area. Therefore, their disappearance, in addition to leaving some traces on the bottom of the sea, no longer leaves any information about them. As for how did they leave, and where did they go? No matter how much Liang thinks about these questions, he will definitely not get a real answer. In that case, Mr. Liang, you are related to this civilization. Nipton laughed, a little less restrained than before, said. Are you related? Liang said something in his heart, it seems that fate is quite big. At the same time, the voice of the long-lost system reappeared in his head, bringing him a huge surprise. Congratulations to the host, open the modifier, array plus 999,999. Open black lens bracket comprehend the ever-changing formations close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough novice close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough entry close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough proficiency close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. ... Formation. Liang's eyes flickered and he took a deep breath to calm down. It seems that he has acquired an incredible ability. The ability from that civilization was actually obtained by him. Chapter 898-Formation. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. The ability from that civilization was actually obtained by him. This is really amazing. Fate. Not only is it as simple as fate, but it is also very fateful. The formation that can suppress the monster is naturally powerful. The strength of the formation is quite obvious, and the formation ability given by the system has also modified the formation level that Liang can perform to the highest level. You can try. When Liang thought about it, countless ways to use the formations appeared in his head. And he, directly handy, became a master of formation. I see. With his hands on the table, he started to paint a little, and the lines were very mysterious. Well. Neptune was puzzled and couldn't help looking at Liang. Why is it so good, and suddenly you are painting something? He didn't dare to propose, so he could only watch Liang's continuous painting on the desktop. Aside. Hancock and the girls of Zalulia Palace also showed very puzzled expressions, and they all looked at Liang, seeing Liang's constant painting on the desktop, but they couldn't understand it at all. Finally. Array drawing is successful. Liang took out the lock and placed two locks at different extreme positions on both sides. Only then did he retract his gaze with satisfaction, and the smile on the corner of his mouth was very bright. Formation, done. Immediately, Liang looked at Neptune and said with a smile, King Neptune, you can try and attack this table with all your strength. Huh. Neptune was stunned, he glanced at the table, a little suspicious. The material used for this table is very high quality, but it absolutely cannot withstand his full blow. With all his strength, he was afraid that even the hardest steel would be shattered. Not to mention, this neck is only made of relatively hard stones. You can just attack. Let me take care of the rest. Liang ignored Nipton's hesitation and continued. Well then. Nipton gritted his teeth and nodded. It was proposed by Liang, and he naturally did not dare to have contrary ideas. It's just a table, and if it is broken, it will be broken. Anyway, it is not that there is no possibility of purchasing. Although the material is precious, it is not priceless. Nipton took out the trident as a weapon, held it in both hands, and looked at the table with a little hesitation on his face, but he became resolute again. In Liang's sight, Nipton slammed the trident down. Boom! A crisp voice came out. Nipton was stunned, his hands were a little numb, as if he was beating on the solid halu stone and couldn't shake it. Li hao hao. Not even a trace of the table could be brought. This. Neptune froze, staring blankly at the table. The table was unscathed, on the contrary, his trident seemed to have a trace of damage. What's happening here? He was completely stunned. He knew the material of the table very well, but it was absolutely impossible to compare it with his own weapon. But what he saw in front of him had to make him doubt the quality of the table. Could it be that he inadvertently changed the table of Halushi? Sure enough. Liang laughed and said, the formation is really amazing. Formation. Nipton fixed his gaze on Liang again, then looked at the place where Liang painted before, and saw two locks. The suction was horrified, and he took a deep breath. He looked at Liang in disbelief, his throat was dry, and said, Mr. Liang, do you know how to form? NLT, 42 and GT. Chapter 899-Mermaid Princess White Star. Is it strange? Liang looked at Nipton's shocked expression and asked back. Although it is the formation method just given by the system, he has already used it perfectly. No, I'm just too shocked. This obviously doesn't have the ability of our age. Actually, you can use it occasionally. I expected it right. Your origins with that civilization are too deep. Nipton took a deep breath, calmed down, and continued. Being able to cast the formation, obviously, in his opinion, Liang's connection with that civilization is definitely strong. No wonder. Liang was so young and possessed such terrifying strength. It turned out that the other party had a lot of connections with this powerful civilization. Of course. All of this is just Nipton's speculation, and even if Liang knew what Nipton was thinking, he would laugh it off. Everyone will guess why they are so strong, 180 inches. However, the only one who can know the truth is himself. Even if other people's brains exploded again, they would definitely not know the reason why he really became stronger. Compared to Neptune's shock, Hancock and the others did not hesitate, looking at Liang suspiciously. They are very aware of Liang's details, and they have never seen such a thing from Liang before. So, now, what's the situation? Could it be that this villain has been hiding? The girls were sullen in their hearts and had already made up their minds. After leaving Dragon Palace City, see how they interrogate. At this moment, at the door of the hall, a burly mermaid gradually walked over. Father. A shark star with blue hair was very respectful and whispered. Shark star, let me introduce you, this one is Mr. Liang. Neptune looked at Liang and introduced it cautiously. Mr. Liang, the Mr. Liang who killed Van der Deacon X. This is really thankful, you killed Van der Deacon X, and Bai Xing won't have to be trapped in the tower in the future. Quote. Shark Star looked very respectful and said. Immediately. He glanced at the position behind him and said, Bai Xing, come in. Here, there is your benefactor. It's still your efficiency. Neptune said with admiration on his face. He is still very satisfied with Shark Star's ability to do things. Less than a while after Liang killed Vanderdecken X, Shark Star already learned of the matter, thus releasing White Star from the tower with rapid efficiency. In Liang's sight. I see. A cute mermaid with a huge size and pink scales gradually came from the hall, with a delicate face and big eyes blinking, looking a little timid and afraid. The mermaid princess, Li Ang said with a hint of admiration. Although he prefers Hancock around him to be more beautiful, the weak aura emanating from Bai Xing still makes people want to protect her. Bai Xing, come to see Mr. Li Ang. Neptune laughed and said, he is your benefactor. You can walk out of the tower, all thanks to Mr. Li Ang. Lord Li Ang. Bai Xing walked timidly in front of Li Ang. His big eyes didn't dare to meet Li Ang's eyes. He lowered his head, and his voice was weak. Her guts are the exact opposite of her size. The legendary mermaid princess, hello. The corner of Li Ang's mouth raised an arc, and he smiled. Chapter 899_Mermaid Princess White Star, NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 43 NGT. The corner of Li Ang's mouth raised an arc, and he smiled. Hello, Mr. Li Ang. Bai Xing was very timid, pretty blushing, and looked down at the floor. Aside, Hancock, Peach Rabbit, and Tina also showed a surprised smile. The beauty of the mermaid princess naturally does not need to be questioned. Only Hancock can be compared with White Star. Of course. After being nourished by Li Ang, the current Hancock is the most beautiful in Li Ang's eyes. More in line with his aesthetic sense. Okay, Shark. Nipton looked at Shark Star and said, you can accompany Bai Xing for a walk. She has not walked out of the hard shell tower for so long. Now, without this threat, her actions will naturally not be restricted. Yes, father. Shark Star nodded solemnly, looked at Li Ang, and said respectfully, Mr. Li Ang, I will leave first. Lord Li Ang, thank you. Bai Xing bowed politely, blushed, and said timidly, you're welcome. Li Ang waved his hand, but he was very calm. Afterwards, Shark gradually left with Bai Xing. Li Ang looked at Bai Xing's back, then Neptune, and smiled, protection is appropriate. Daughter is naturally used to protect Zero. Neptune smiled and said, I mean, her identity is well protected. Li Ang shook his head and continued. Immediately, Nipton's smile froze, a little jerky, and he said, Mr. Li Ang, what kind of identity can she have? She's just my daughter. In front of me, don't hide it. I just don't say it, it doesn't mean I don't know. In fact, not only I know it, but everyone else knows it. It's just that no one has taken action. So, in the next days, you have to be careful. If one is inappropriate, I'm afraid that the consequences will make you regret it. Li Ang smiled and said. No point, but he knew that Neptune must know what he meant. Really? Neptune took a deep breath and said, Mr. Li Ang, although I don't know where you got it. But I hope you can keep this secret. I won't preach everywhere, so, you can rest assured. It's not me that you should pay attention to, but other people. Do you think you can hide from the world? Li Ang continued to speak. Hearing this, Nipton was silent for a while, looked at Li Ang, and asked, Mr. Li Ang, what do you think? What else can I look at? As long as it comes, it's safe. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. Li Ang smiled and said very directly. In this regard, Neptune was helpless. But it is also a fact that Bai Xing has nothing to do with Li Ang at all. Then, Li Ang closed the lock on the desktop to 4.2. These locks are the key to the formation. It can be said that there is some kind of special energy in these locks, and it can also be said that these locks are special substances that can make the formation more powerful. If there is no lock, Li Ang can also create a formation, but the formation is not so perfect. Locks can bring additional effects and functions, so Li Ang thought, if there is a chance, he can rush to the bottom of the sea to find more such locks. Although the formation method is not very helpful to him. Relying on his own strength, he is enough to deal with everything. However, the more ability he has, the more he will not consider it a burden. Learning more is not as good as learning more. This sentence is invalid for Liang. It can be said that in Liang, learning more is learning more. Anything, under the modification of the system, is directly proficient. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 900 _ New World. Mr. Liang, what's your journey next? Neptune asked with a bit of doubt. Let's see, but we should go to the New World for a walk. Liang's face was calm and he said slowly. The sea area in the New World must be traveled again. It's not a waste to come to this world. Hearing this, Neptune was dumbfounded and murmured in his heart. It seems that the sea area in the New World will be muddled by this monster. Those so-called 4 emperors, I am afraid they have to work with their tails tucked. Otherwise, encountering this monster, the 4 emperors would have to drink their hatred on the spot. I hope those guys from the 4 emperors will be lucky. 1 down. Neptune led Liang and the girls to walk around the Dragon Palace City. Most of the features of Dragon Palace City still made Liang amazed. The characteristic buildings only exist on Fishman Island, and it is impossible to imitate them in other places. It can only be built here, and the geographical environment here, as well as many materials, can only be found on the bottom of the sea. You have worked hard all the way. In front of the gate of Dragon Palace, Liang looked at Neptune and smiled. Should be. Oh 9. Neptune smiled prudently and said, it's my blessing to be able to lead the way for Mr. Liang. I just hope that Mr. Liang doesn't care about our entire Fishman Island because of some trivial matters. Do I look like such a stingy person? Liang looked at Neptune with a smile and said. Of course not. Neptune answered quickly, with cold sweat on his spine. Standing in front of Liang and talking, the pressure in his heart is still very huge. Once he said the wrong thing, he would face extremely dire consequences, which he could not bear. Okay, just send it here. I'll take a walk around Fishman Island, and you don't have to send it off. If no one does anything to me, I won't kill anyone. Of course, even if someone does something, I won't target Fishman Island. As the saying goes, I won't do anything to anyone who has nothing to do with it. Liang waved his hand and said very calmly. Then I'm relieved. Neptune exhaled heavily and felt a little relieved. Subsequently, Liang led Hancock and the girls beside him to gradually leave the Dragon Palace City. In general, the harvest of Dragon Palace City is still good. On the way, he pulled the lock he got from Neptune from his bosom, his eyes narrowed slightly. It is a pleasant surprise to be able to get something about the formation. Although the improvement of his strength is not very big, it is better than nothing. Where are we going next? Hancock's pretty face showed some doubts. Now the coating has not been successfully completed, and it will take a few days. Therefore, it is unrealistic to go to sea now, and it is necessary to stay here on Fishman Island for a few days. Just take a walk. We haven't been to many places, and we can take advantage of these few days. Go to Fishman Island. Liang showed a smile, put away the lock in his hand, and said. Yeah. The girls nodded slightly in agreement. The Dragon Palace really gave them a different feeling, a very beautiful and atmospheric building. The group gradually left the gate of Dragon Palace City. After Liang and the others left, Neptune stood in front of the gate of Dragon Palace City with a wry smile, shook his head, and walked back to Dragon Palace City step by step with a relaxed mood. Standing in front of Liang, the pressure is too great. Even though he is His Majesty the King of Fishman Island, compared to Liang, his identity can be ignored. Fortunately, this monster is going to the New World. Otherwise, I'm afraid, our Fishman Island will really be frightened every day. Those people in the New World will tremble. Neptune's eyes flashed and he said slowly. When he thought of the 4 emperors who were rampant and domineering in the New World, he felt relieved for a while. Finally, someone can rectify the group of 4 emperors. Chapter 900 _ New World. NLT, 45 and GT. Finally, someone can rectify the group of 4 emperors. Father, that one, has left. Sharkstar took Bai Xing back to Dragon Palace City, and asked with some heart palpitations. Yeah, if he doesn't leave, how can I be so relaxed? Neptune nodded, relieved. When he thought that Liang was still hanging out on Fishman Island, he was still a little flustered. In case, who does not have long eyes and provokes this monster? The two fathers and sons were in the midst of this depression, looking up, very helpless. In a blink of an eye. Liang and the girls stayed here for several days on Fishman Island. Location on the coast of Fishman Island. The ordinary number coding was successful. After Liang handed in Barry, he took his daughters to log into the ordinary account gradually. It's still the same comfort. Corona floated in midair, her big eyes turned into crescent moons, and smiled. Yeah, or our boat is more perfect. Hancock nodded approvingly and smiled. After all, made from keel and atom wood, the quality is self-evident. Well, we're ready to go. With a smile on his face, Liang gradually controlled the ordinary and left the area of Fishman Island. This trip, get ready to go to a new world. Floating from Fishman Island, it has already crossed the red soil continent above, and then appeared in the sea area of the new world. The entire ordinary ship left Fishman Island and entered the bottom of the sea. Whoa! The water is flowing, and the fish are swimming freely in the sea. Fishman Island. Neptune, Sharkstar, Bai Xing, and others watched the departure of the ordinary. Finally, send this monster away. Neptune smiled wryly and shook his head. If I can let him shelter me on the Fishman Island, I can let the residents of the Fishman Island live on the blue sea. Sharkstar also sighed and said. If you can pull Liang into the Fishman Island camp and protect Fishman Island, then, the residents of Fishman Island don't have to be frightened and afraid of being captured and used as slaves. Moreover, the idea of the past can also be realized. Mermaids and murlocs on Fishman Island can live in the blue ocean and live together with humans. However, their thoughts would be meaningless without the formidable force of Liang. The other side. Inside Fishman Island. A chaotic street. Here, it is called Fishman Street. That monster left. Cody raised his head, his eyes twinkled, and he whispered. Vanderdecken IX was killed in seconds, and has no ability to resist at all. Around, several murlocs whispered and said. I know, that's why I didn't provoke him. Otherwise, I'd die too. Cody's face became very solemn and said. He was very fortunate. Fortunately, he did not provoke the monster Liang. Otherwise, he might have turned into a cold corpse like Vanderdecken IX. Boss, even you can't beat the opponent. Several murlocs spoke up one after another. Me. Cody shook his head, his face was heavy, and said, the entire Fishman Island is not his enemy of unity.